All right, and welcome back to another episode of Rap Drinks. We are joined today by our very special friend, Brian Spears, who is a prosthetic makeup artist. Thanks for joining us, Brian. Welcome to the show.
Cheers, man. Cheers.
Very much. Cheers.
Very excited to have you and to pick your brain about all things makeup and prosthetic in the industry. My first question would actually be just to kind of get in there because I don't actually know a lot about, how prosthetics works. How would you describe your job if you're like at a party, you're at a bar and someone comes up to you and they ask you, hey, what do you do for a living? Like, how do you explain that to them?
I kill people for a living.
Yeah. Nice.
Usually, as a prosthetic makeup artist, we're using it to enhance. It's more than it's. We usually start with a sculpture. We mold those, and it's usually a three-dimensional effect to the face, or could be a body part. It's that type of aspect. We're enhancing the appearance of an actor.
Did you learn this through school? Did you teach yourself how to do this, or?
I did go to a college a long time ago. I don't necessarily know. It definitely helped build a foundation, but I think a lot, and I think you guys can agree, we all can agree in this world of filmmaking, trial and error and making mistakes and doing it, just being able to do what you do multiple times. There's that, 10,000 hours of, if you put that much time into it. Well, when I was young, I wanted to be a makeup artist since I was 13.
Oh, wow.
But I didn't know what that was.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. And it was like, oh, I just thought I was a makeup artist because I did this, or I did, it was all of, I was very much into art, but not in that Bob Ross kind of way. Okay. And I used to read a lot of horror magazines. Mm-hmm. There was one in particular called Fangoria magazine. And as a little kid, I would be fascinated because I was terrified of scary movies. And then I realized somebody makes those monsters. And it's on that day that I just said, this would be the coolest job. Plus, all those makeup artists all had, horror T-shirts, rock T-shirts. They all had mullets. They were like rock stars to me.
The cool guys on
it was
set.
that. It was, and I think this is all pre-internet, so it was that tangible, looking at things and figuring it out, reading books about it, reading. That I think there was a little bit more. You can Google something now and figure out how to do it right away, but I think there was something more about. Osmosis, you would just read everything, look at everything, pictures. I would just stare at pictures. All my horror magazines, and I have thousands and thousands. They're all dog-eared, tattered. They've got clay on them. They've got coffee stains. They've got all this. I could never sell them, if they're a collector's edition because the covers are missing. It's all that kind of stuff. I was very a hands-on kind of person. I didn't really play sports. It was movies that I was fascinated with. It was a whole other world that I loved out there.
Yeah.
And how did you get into the movie aspect of it? What was that first jump into it like?
I mean, when I came out of school, they give you some type of certificate that says you're graduate. I only live about an hour north of New York City, but the New York City and film world seems so far away. It just seemed like it was impossible to break into this world. And where I lived, haunted houses were a big deal, hay rides and stuff like that, because I have trees where I live. We don't have street signs, so it's not street lights. So it's a much scarier. So I started doing that. Hay rides, and then there's a couple makeup stores in New York. There was one, mainly Alcone. I think I left a card there. I would go to colleges and say, hey, I could do your effects for your student films. Mm-hmm. I used to go to conventions, horror conventions, and sell prop skulls and stuff like that I would make. I was just going there because I was going to go anyways as a nerd, but that way I could drink and sell stuff, and it would pay my bar tab. So it was all that kind of stuff. And I just knew I wanted to work in film. I just didn't know how to get in there. And it was just basically doing short films, a little bit here, a little bit there. You work on one thing, you meet people.
Yeah.
And then they call you or recommend you for the next thing. It was very word of mouth, but also I just didn't know how to do it because, again, I literally live so close to the city.
Yeah.
But it was a whole other world.
Do you remember the first film you worked on and like what the
yeah.
first effect was you had to do?
It was a movie called Midnight Mass.
Okay.
It was a post-apocalyptic vampire film, which I've done a few of those. And we filmed it right after, well, we had to wait. It was right after 9/11.
Okay.
That was the first job I got. I had been at I think it was in January of 2001. I was at a horror convention, and I was selling stuff, and they were promoting this movie that was coming out, this vampire movie. So I met the makeup artist, Pete Gerner, who I still work with today, and we met at a bar, and he was like, hey, you should come and do our effects with us. So it was already being designed and everything was being made. I was being hired as an applicator.
Okay.
And I remember going down there and being so excited. It was down by the Jersey Shore, like Point Pleasant, New Jersey.
Yeah.
And I think I made $75 a day.
Cool.
But it took 3 hours to get there, you know.
$50 in tolls.
Yeah, but it was like, whoa. And I think the first week they were like, oh, wow, we can't pay this guy $75. They were already allowing me to sleep on the couch of the producer's house, which was a nice house. I'll give them that. So it was just, I was making $100 a day by the end of the shoot, which I thought was a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
It really wasn't.
Yeah.
And it was like I still had a part-time job or a full-time job that would let me take time off. And it was, I loved it. I mean, it was one of those things. And then with Pete, we said, hey, we're going to join forces. And we got a short film right after that. And then we got another movie right after that. So we were like off and running pretty quick. But again, it was, we'd work. We both had regular jobs. We both dabble in, we would dabble in making this stuff, and then every 3 days we'd get together. Every 4 days he'd come up to my house, crash on the couch, and we would just go down to the basement and build stuff. And it was just every movie just got a little bit bigger or a little bit better. I mean, in our minds, we were gods. Like we thought this is, oh my God, we're doing this crazy stuff. Like, I look back at it now, it's it's a little cringy, but
Yeah.
But I mean, I love. No matter if the movie was good or bad, I mean, I loved every movie I worked on. There was that's kind of, I don't really have, I'm a single guy with no family, so that's my legacy. So that's the way I look at it. It's like I've had a lot of fun with all this stuff, and each job just luckily gets better and better.
Yeah. But also the experience from the last job, you probably take on the next job too.
Yeah, I mean, everything, I can't complain about my job because I actually love working and doing what I get to do. I can complain about all the other aspects of the job, like the actual putting makeup on people, getting to design the effects, getting to build it is the greatest thing. The thing I hate the most is driving to the city and park.
Yeah.
That's the scariest thing I have to do anywhere. It's just not. That's not my world. I spent a long time working in upstate New York in the Woodstock, Kingston area, which now is a mecca for filming. But back when I started, it was just, we were shooting in some guy's backyard.
Yeah.
So that's it's grown. And it was just the aspect of all that kind of going away. They say, it's like we all work in the circus. I think it's more like we're all carnies. Like the circus is when you make it to the union, you're working in the circus. But when you start out, you're one of those carny people that, hopefully we did everything right and the Ferris wheel doesn't fall apart.
Yeah.
It's just cobbled together with what you have.
Yeah. I didn't know what I was doing when I started. I knew what I had to do to achieve this, but I didn't, didn't know materials, couldn't afford the materials that were the correct ones to use.
Yeah.
Not that I was ever, unsafe or anything like that, but it was just, I read everything and oh, this is the ingredients to do this. This is what I need to make this. I didn't think actually, I was using, we started off, you make foam latex. It's what we make the appliances out in the beginning. Now we use a lot of silicones. But foam latex, I used my home oven. It's not exactly the safest thing to do. So,
it's great
within the
ventilation
second job, I had to buy my mom a new oven. I was like, let's not eat those chicken nuggets. They taste a little weird. So there was all that kind of aspects, you learn by making mistakes. And I think that's the other thing with my world. There's things where you can make a mold, and all of a sudden that mold gets locked on your sculpture, and you lose your. You do that once, you'll never do it again.
Yeah.
So there's certain things, I'm sure in your guys' world, like there's certain things, if you didn't build that right and it falls apart,
Yeah.
well, the next time you know exactly how to do
Yeah,
that. And it's
yeah.
kind of the same, listen, man, I have a very cool, I think we all get to work in film. Like it's the coolest job in the world. But
Yeah.
I look at it as a very blue collar job. My dad was an electrician. I come from a family of carpenters. I'm just coming in, doing my time, doing my job. That's the way I look at it. It just so happens we get to be in a lavish
There's just something on
backdrop.
fire over there, and it's normal.
Yeah, we get to see famous people.
Yeah.
That's,
Making monsters.
Yeah, and again, I 90% of the time I'm putting blood on someone. So I'm not exactly and I love it. Like there's an art form to that. But,
What is that art form? Like, what is that art form of putting on blood on someone?
I mean, I just think, you just don't want it to look staged.
Okay.
Like everything should look real. I mean, I remember being in college. I went to the bookstore. I went to school in Pittsburgh, so we were surrounded by like Carnegie Mellon and some pretty big schools. And I went to a college bookstore and we found a book on forensics. Now I was a little obnoxious 19-year-old kid. We're laughing at all these dead bodies in the middle of, and they told us to leave the bookstore. It was a $300 book, and I'm like, I can never afford that. As soon as I graduated, I got that book, but it just had, instead of just pools of blood on someone, it's the way it would fall. Like, is he face down? Like, I need that blood to go in that direction. I need to, you got to make it look cool for a picture. If you saw like real life gore, it just looks like squished bananas.
Yeah.
So you need to make it look cooler for the camera. I mean, it's the same way, you build this set that we're all behind. It's really just 4 walls, and it's all the stuff that goes into it, and the way you light it, and the way you do things to it that
Make
give
it
it the
pop.
life. Yeah, and that's And again, I grew up in the early '80s. So it was that whole video store generation. I grew up on movies that weren't necessarily great movies, horror movies anyways, like that I would read about. And it was, number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, so the stories weren't really good. But the makeup effects and the art form and the art direction were like incredible.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what drew me to it. I mean, listen, when most of my friends were watching, The Breakfast Club or John Hughes movies, I was watching Luther the Geek and The Toxic Avenger. Mm-hmm. Now, I grew out of those movies. I mean, I still have a affinity for horror, but, then you discover, like, Scorsese, David Fincher. You discover, like, whoa, there's stories and all that. So I think I've always been ahead of the curve. I wouldn't say I'm a movie snob, but I'll make fun of everyone's movie taste if I don't like it, and I love bad B movies, but those aren't necessarily the ones that, like, I'm going to put on my top 10. I mean, I've got a couple, that are in there. But, it was sort of the punk rock, the rock and rollness to them all that drew me to, like, horror movies especially. And again, the art form was that someone sculpted that demon, that monster, that gargoyle, like, and it was like, whoa, that's really cool. Like, how did they do that? And then you would just expand on that. And again, I probably ripped off or been influenced by everything I've seen in the past. So it's just, you just want it to look cool on camera.
You mentioned that you've made some mistakes in the beginning of your career, like putting latex in your mother's oven.
Yeah.
What are some of those comparisons, like things you don't want to do as a beginning, getting into this industry versus like you as a pro now? Things to avoid if someone's like taking notes on the other side of the camera.
Well, I mean, there's definitely materials you have to, like, is somebody allergic to latex? Is somebody like, is this material, like, in the beginning I've experimented with gelatin, but now you go on underneath some of these lights now and gelatin won't set up as much. It's more like the behind the scenes, like, if you screw up a mold, I've definitely not labeled my cups with the materials, and all of a sudden I'm like waiting all day for something to set up, and I'm like, oh wait, did I not? I've thrown out more material being like, did I mix that correctly or not correctly? Oh shit! Like there was just little things like that well, did I make the sculpture too big so when it sits on his face it's way at, like a way huge appliance for that could have been a lot more subtler. I think the longer you do this, like your eye gets better.
Yeah.
You know, like I can cringe at some of the way I painted someone's face. And when I say painted, I would blend it a little bit better nowadays than I would have back then. Like it was I mentioned that I came from like a haunted house background. Haunted houses, you're much louder, you're much broader.
Yeah.
That world doesn't work in film. I was really lucky. My first few projects were on 35. Wow. Like I probably did 4 or 5 35, 16s, super 16s. And just like you had that the film quality of it made your makeups look better. And then it was digital, like, oh, our reds pop more. We have to be careful of this color. We have to be careful of that color. And some of that, like, you can test. But let's be honest, the smaller the movie, your test is on screen.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, in your department, you show up and you got to build a rig or something. You're like, well, what? You got to take everything out of that truck to figure out. Same thing happens with us. It's like, how are we going to figure this out on the day? Everything we built, we built everything because we wanted you to shoot it on the left side. Why are you shooting it on the right side? Like, whoa, this is not going to work.
Have you found so you're saying like you make the prosthetics or the whole piece, the masks, anything like that. Then you also paint them. Have you seen one side of that part of your job change more than the other?
I mean, there's advents of new materials. When I started, I did a lot with foam latex, and foam latex it's as opposed to like a silicone where you're sort of light affects that. The other one is more opaque, like it's just dense foam, so light doesn't come through that. So you have to paint it differently. You have to actually paint it.
Right.
Where silicone, you're sort of coloring it and tinting it in areas and you're using, you tint your pieces and then enhance it with the color.
Okay.
So yes, there's been world of new materials that I'm experimenting with, and like luckily when I first started, myself and my partner Pete, we didn't know all those materials, and we were working. It was 2 of us in a shop. Nowadays, I work in more shops with other people, and they do research. I do research. We all like bring a little bag of tricks to it and reflect on each other, and we could talk about it. It's like when you're alone in solitaire just doing your craft, you make whatever you're doing with the materials that you have.
Yeah.
Now I'm more open to different materials, and that is a huge difference.
I'm sure there's kind of an aspect to when you're by yourself, you're looking at something. Does this suck?
Yeah.
And now if you got 20 people, are like, hey, this sucks, right?
I literally, it took a long time, but there were so many times. One of the best exercises is make whatever I'm going to make. If I'm going to sculpt that, I will wreck it now and then start over again, because that second attempt I do is way better.
It's better.
Because I'll spend all day trying to correct that original thing that I'm working. Oh, like the left side is not as good as the right side. I think it's like I'm right-handed, so like I would always sculpt the right side first. And the right side was, oh, wow, that's exactly what I want. Well, guess what? The left side, I'll just make his left side burnt because I can't match it. So there's all that kind of aspects where now I'll start with the left side, and then I can match the right side better. It's all like little stupid things. Just the way, this piece of clay needs to look more footballish, and I'll make this, make it look like that. And if I put it here and I blend that, it's a lot of trial and error. Also, step back from it, walk away.
Yeah.
I find that that's one of the best lessons I've learned is like, you know what? I'm sitting at this table or making this. I just need to get up and walk away and just let it breathe, and I'll come back and I'll have a better idea.
Do 2 things at once, so you have something.
Also, there's plenty of drugs you can take that can enhance things. So, like,
It's not enough to just the fumes of foam latex.
But I mean, you
Just
come
go
back
away.
and you're like, wow, was I that high making that?
Go away, do some shrooms, and come back. See what it looks like. You talk about all these challenges you faced, when you're dealing with some of these prosthetics, and, the first time you go and you go, screw it, I'm just going to scrap it and start over. And with experience, you learn that. What happens when you're on set and you don't have the time to scrap it and you just have to work with what you got?
All right, so there's a couple things. The older I've gotten, I've realized, hey, I don't care if it gets on set. You paid for it. It's not my fault if we can't get it on there. In the beginning, it used to really, really bother me because this is what I'm here for, and we're not getting it. You're not shooting the way that I thought we were going to shoot it or the way I suggested it. I find now I have a little bit more confidence. I can tell them where I think the camera should be, and they will listen. It is very much a collaborative art form. So I'm very appreciative, but also make friends with your DP, make friends with your crew.
Yeah.
Because something that I don't know, you guys, like, I don't know what the hell a cardellini is, but you know how many times that, like, oh, I need something, and the guy will just, hey, you just need a cardellini, and it'll hook something up, and it'll make my thing stand better. But yeah, sure, I've shown up on set and we built something and we're just can't use it, or we can't. It needs to be adapted. You just got to run with the punches. You just got to know what. I don't care. I mean, I do have. I want it to look good when I walk on set with it, and everyone, ooh, wow, that's cool looking. Yeah. But honestly, I only care what it looks like in the camera.
Right.
So if I have to hold something together with duct tape, if I'm just out of frame holding something, if any of that I just want the shot to look cool.
Yeah.
Because I know it can look cool. Well, if we just, I think it was Rob Bottin who did the thing. He said, how the light effects, just turn all the lights off. It'll look amazing. So it's that aspect of, like, you just got to know what the camera needs to see.
Yeah.
That question of, like, oh, God, we built all of this to come on to set. Yeah, I mean, it happens on every movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I just did a movie last week, and we did this whole 4-hour burn makeup. It's great. Now, I didn't love every shot they got of it. Oh, when he lifted his hand up, it wasn't like I could have painted his bottom of his hands. I didn't know. The top hand looks awesome. So I was like, hey, dude, just go like that. Come up and don't do this. Do this.
Right.
Yeah. Block your face like that. There's aspects of it that look amazing, and I'm just going to have to tell them, cut around all the other stuff. Like, you have to learn, and that's the thing, is if you're honest with your crew, and you can say, guys, it's going to look better if he just turns this way. But sure, I've built major prosthetics that we just never even got to. So it was like, oh, all right, you just need blood here. Now, I don't always just want to put blood on something. That's the easy fix. But if you could do it where it looks cool, it's okay to put blood on it. Also, there's been times like, all right, I got a seam. It's popping up. The guy's face is ripping off. I did a movie. I didn't design it. It was early on in my career, and it had a blood gag where the guy's going to get his throat ripped out. And I was like, God, dude, I think you have it ripped out. I think, the guy, I think you have too much pressure in your air compressor. And he's like, oh, no, I want it to blow out. Well, it blew the whole damn piece off.
Oh, shit.
So then I was like, all right, never mind. So we had to just go back, and he was all frustrated. I just said, well, we can't sit here and argue about it. Like, we just got to figure out and turn down the pressure and get this to work. I was like, all right, the guy's just going to go up there and hold it, and, like, we'll make all of that work. Like, there's always something that goes wrong. I think we're good at our craft if we can have something go wrong, but it still looks good on camera, and no one ever knows.
Don't let it ruin your day. You just got to move on and fix it.
Like, there was and again, I bring this up because it's fresh, but, like, I was just on a movie, and they had a lot of hurdles to go through, and I was just like, guys, we're here making movies. Like, it's like we're not curing everything. We're not causing traffic jams. We're not, like, we're here to make movies. Let's just put a smile on your face and just have a good time. And I think that takes a little bit of time. Also, listen, I'm disgruntled. I'm an old man now. Like, I was much more gung-ho in my 20s and 30s. Like, I'm approaching, by the time this comes out, I'm 50 years old. I don't
We're not that
care.
slow.
It's like, at a certain aspect, I just, have fun with it, and also just know what the camera needs and know what your director needs. And I think that's another thing. When I started out, like, it was definitely more of a community thing. I think the more you get into the union world, we are all more cogs in a system. A great system, don't get me wrong. Like, it pays well. You get to do bigger projects. I don't have to explain to family members who's in this movie and give them 23 credits before they might actually know who the actor is. Like, nowadays, it's like, oh, whoa, I work on much bigger projects, which is great. But it's still like you're still doing the same thing you did in the beginning when you first started. But I guess it was the community aspect. I would meet with the directors, talk with directors. I would have a say. But also, when I first started, I've done so many zombie movies, like when I first started, because that's like 101 for makeup artists. Before it was the director or the producer's best friend or his girlfriend that was playing the zombies. Now I get to have actors play zombies, which is a huge difference. I remember we did this movie in Philly. and they just put out a local casting call. And we literally got 2 transient kids. They were very cool and fun, but they friggin' smelled. Like, we had to tell production, like, yo, they got to take showers before they come in here. Like, they're just like, they were gung-ho, and I'm not giving, but they were just doing it because, like, hey, man, we make $100 and we get to be in a movie. But they weren't actors either. And then I did this other movie. It was a Glass Eye Pix movie BT worked on it, Brandon Taylor. It was called I Sell the Dead. And that movie, like, changed my, like, it was the first movie that I did. And I had done, a handful of movies before that. But, like, that one was the movie that just changed my eyes. And, whoa, this is the way filmmaking should be. And this is the way we should be making movies. And it was more of a community aspect. It was... We weren't just cogs in the system. We weren't just a low-budget ragtag, like, figuring it out on the day. Like, we've all shown up on movies, and it's like, you're just taking it because it's like, hey, it's a paycheck, or it's this, or it's that. It's a couple days. We've all done that. I don't like doing that because I want to be involved. I don't ever want to direct. I don't ever want to write. I just want to bring other people's visions together. And I want to make an actor, like, cooler in his part.
Yeah.
Did it take you any time to kind of like learn the confidence, I guess, to be able to talk?
I'm a cocky asshole.
But like you were saying, it's fine. You were saying like to be able to tell the DP or the actor even like, don't show your hand this way. Like, did you, when you were first starting out, did you feel like it wasn't your place to be able to like, hey, don't fuck up my shit, my name's on this too, kind of thing? Like,
yeah, I've never really had. I mean, sure, in the beginning you get a little timid. Sometimes with name actors, I get a little like, I'm never intimidated by an actor. I'm in awe of what they do. The only time I get intimidated is if anybody was in the TV show The Wire, and then I just freaking. I remember being on a show with 50 Cent, and a couple of the guys in the background were all from The Wire. I didn't give a crap that 50 Cent was there. I was like, oh my God, that's Weebay from The Wire. I can't believe this. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I even went up to him on set. I'm like, I know I shouldn't be doing this, man, but oh, God. And he was like, oh, cool. Like I said, I didn't care who half the cast was, and I had a pretty good cast. So, like, I'm there to hire. I'm hired for a job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also, I really respect actors that get into it, and be like, listen, we've all had actors like, hey, that line yesterday was over here, not here. Like, I get it. They pay attention to everything on their face, and I try to be respectful as I can. But I keep my mouth quiet a little bit more on a union shoot. Mm-hmm. But if I think the camera could be better in this place, I remember being on a big show, and I said, if you put the camera lower at the table, when their head hits the table, it's going to look like it really hit the table. And he moved the camera, and it made a huge difference, and we got the shot in one take. Nice. So like. I don't, because there are meetings upon meetings now, like on the bigger projects. So that's all figured out usually.
Yeah.
But on a smaller movie, I don't mind saying things. I mean, the last 2 movies, I did 2 movies during the strike. Mm-hmm. They were lucky enough to get their releases and get everything. They were approved. And they were small movies that, I'll be honest, I don't know if I could have done if there was no strike, because I would have been busier. Financially, they weren't, But when you're not making any money, that money looked really good.
Right, yeah. Right.
But I was hired. They brought me in because they saw some of the movies that I had done, my indie movies and stuff like that. They were big fans of. I work a lot with Glass Eye Pix. And they're one of the few companies that I will still to this day work on anything if they ask me to, because they bring, the creativity out of you, and they allow everyone to shine a little bit. So that's the stuff I want. I just want to make movies, guys.
Yeah.
I want to be. There's way more talented people than me that do this job. Way more. I mean, I'm certain. I think my aspect is I'm a good cheerleader. I have fun. I bring a certain energy, and I don't care what it looks like on the back. I care what it looks like when it faces the camera, and I think that's important. We all want this great makeup that walks out on set and the entire set turns around and is like, oh my God. But I don't care. I'll take my oh my God moment the minute it's on screen and in the camera.
Yeah.
And I will talk up an actor, and I will be like, I did a short years ago, and the director actually thanked me because it was a little kid and he had to do a blood gag, and I was, I'm an uncle, so I know what little kids want to hear, and I know, you know, and he came over and said, hey, thank you so much for giving that guy a pep talk, that little kid, and you made it so well for him. I mean, I appreciate that. Like, the last job I did, they had some issues with AD, so there was no AD. So I was yelling at people to get, like, let's get going. We got to make this. Now, selfishly, the only reason I'm yelling is because my stuff's going to get cut.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, or I'm going to get one take. And we did only get one take on a lot of the stuff. But I thought it was the coolest thing. One of the grips, she came over and said, hey, you showed up the last 2 days that you've been here. She's like, I wanted to leave the movie before that. And you came in, and your energy was so much fun.
Right.
Because after all, man, we're just making make-believe.
Yeah, for sure.
We're making make-believe. I love that.
I'm curious about, so I know we were talking about like not having time on set to fix stuff if you ever get in that moment and how you adapt to that. I'm curious, have you ever like had some kind of gag or something set up and you planned for it to look a certain way on camera and you got a totally different effect, but you were like, oh shit, that was actually even cooler than I thought.
A lot of times that's with blood.
Okay.
Like camera department will be like, where's the blood going? I have no freaking idea. It's going to go
I do physics.
It's going to go wherever you don't put plastic.
It's going to go right in your lens, yeah.
And then, so that's a lot of things. I can't control that aspect of it. I remember being on one movie. I was on I Sell the Dead. Now, we were shooting in Long Island. And this was, I think 2003. I don't know when it was. I don't go by dates. Maybe it was 2005, 2008. But cell phones weren't like what they were. You know what I mean? So, and I remember I've always been late to the party when it comes to cell phones. I had the Nextel brick, where you could do the two-way because everybody I knew was in construction.
Yeah.
So we all had that. And I remember going and shooting this movie. I remember I had email. It was AOL, which I still have today. And I remember being on set. We shot for a week and a half, 2 weeks. I drove, come home. I also, in my department, we take a couple movies at a time because we're never really on set for, let's say it's a 19-day shoot. Let's say it's 30 days. We're only there a certain amount of those days. Very rarely am I there on a movie. I can count the movies that I'm there every day. And so I remember we got back home. We had another movie scheduled that we had 2 weeks to build we had it started, but we had 2 weeks to finesse everything. The dude sent me a letter, not an email, a letter in my mailbox. So I got home after being away for a week, and he mailed me that he changed the schedule, that he would be at my house literally a day and a half later.
Oh my God.
So everything we had built, and we were shooting at my house because I had a garage, and I was like, all right, it'll just be easier. You can do all the green screen stuff and all the little sets that we were going to build. And we had a couple puppet, very crude puppets that we could build at that time. And we, oh my God, we have to. And then, of course, we're staying up all night to try to get it done. The power goes out. Because it's a thunderstorm and I live in, where there's trees, not street lights. So it was like one of those things. I remember my partner burnt my couch because he left a candle. I'm like, what the fuck? You couldn't, gonna burn the house down? So it was one of those nightmare things. We wound up getting something salvageable that we could put on screen. I mean, is that a movie I would wish I could do over again? Sure. But,
That's
what
when
we got on screen.
Write him a letter back.
Well,
and he doesn't get it until you've already shot.
And I couldn't understand. I mean, this dude was shooting on 35, which was a whole other discrepancy because it was like, oh my God, but he believed in 35 and, yada, 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 yada. He came from the film world, but it was like, you're literally shooting a movie that deserves digital because you could save some money, but, I don't think he had to shoot on film. That was his aspect. He needed the certain colors and he saved us. He knew everything about cameras, so I have to defer to him. But it was one of those movies that, to this day, it's not a very, I mean, I can brag that it was on 35, so that's cool for me. But other than that, it was like, why did why did the movie even come out is a whole other question. But, I did rewatch it on Tubi the other day and did laugh the whole way through. There might have been some rap drinks involved in that one because it was, woo. But that's so that was probably one of the biggest things. But we've walked on set and everything had to change or something, that's just adapting. I mean, I think it's in your world too.
Yeah.
Like it's
absolutely, yeah.
And you've been on like small sets, big sets.
Yeah.
Like what's the department like? What's the structure of department, positions?
I mean, the smaller movie, it's me and usually a very small crew. The bigger you have more money. Like,
Yeah.
it's harder to say no. Like, I still like the smaller movie because you can say no. The bigger the project is, they don't want to hear no. They'll just toss money and figure it out. Like, they don't care that you didn't sleep for 12 days and you're working 17 hours a day in the shop. They don't they just want the finished product.
Right.
And that's, and I get it. You say, and schedules change. At least, like, sometimes the smaller the movie, it doesn't, like, you'll lose something because of weather, or you'll lose something, you lose the location, you know what I mean? But you kind of know the days you're working because the money's there and they have to shoot here. We'll have to figure it out how to do it, on a bigger project. Oh, we're just going to move this day. You know what I mean? We're going to move this till later down. But it also won't be the next day. It'll usually be because the next day is already figured out. So that's basically, it's all like logistic stuff.
Yeah.
It's all the headache stuff. It's never really the art form or what we do that changes. It's those like little logistic stuff that really.
And in those big productions, what are the positions that are in there?
Well, I've been lucky enough. I've been in the union close to 10 years now, and I've worked for one guy, designs it, Steve Josh Torrey, for like 7 of those years, and now I've been working with another guy, Monster in My Closet, Jeremy Sellenfriend. But also because of those guys and recommendations, I've worked on, I did Army of the Dead with a huge LA makeup firm. I was lucky enough because my friends got on it and recommended me. I did a couple Walking Dead episodes that we're filming, locally. So like aspects of like that, I get to see this whole other world. I got to day play on a couple days of Evil, and that's headed up by Joel Harlow, who's an Oscar-winning makeup artist.
That's awesome.
And the crew that he has, I'm a guy that some of those jobs hold brushes and glue cups. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, it's just cool to hear those guys' stories. Those were the guys with the mullets that I read about.
Do you, on those kind of things, $7.98 is kind of all makeup. Do you have to defer to the, like, beauty makeup people on those kind of things?
Sometimes they are, like, in charge of our department, or sometimes our department has its own, like, a lot of the projects I work on, it's like there is a department head for makeup effects, and then there's a department head for regular hair and makeup, and But I don't look at it like, yes, we all have titles, and you have to respect those titles. Makeup department head, keys, additional makeup artists. But I'm always been like, let's all work together, and I find that those are the best departments when you can, let's all share in it. Let's all do it. I've done makeups on huge shows where. And it worked out great. Prosthetic was on half the face, and the makeup artist started the second. We're tag teaming the makeup. Hair's coming in, or they'll be like, "Oh, a lot of times tattoos can go in a different way. Like that could be the regular makeup department puts those on, or we put them on." There was a show where we did the tattoos because day wise we wouldn't be there that much, so it just took one aspect off of the hair and makeup department, the makeup artist specifically. But they would come in there. It would just alleviate because they have to get 6 people ready. And they didn't need to worry about like covering a tattoo. A lot of times we're covering a tattoo just to put a tattoo on where that tattoo was. So there's a lot of like little things like that. But I have always tried to work. I remember doing a movie very early on. It was a movie that I applied for on Craigslist. And I got the job, and the guy hired me, but he didn't think I didn't find out till later that he was a guy that bid on another job, and he got it after I left the job, which is another good little story. But I remember he yelled at me because I made room for the makeup artist to have space on the table. Like we were outside shooting this big scene, and we were setting it up, and I just gave her half my table so she could set up and get ready. And he's like, "Hey man, these are the effects tables," and I thought that was weird because she was a very attractive woman. So, not to sound weird, but it's like, hey, I'm going to be nice to the pretty lady.
Yeah.
And like, he just was all like, why would you make room? That's the other department. I was like, aren't we all shooting the same movie?
Yeah.
Like I need her to make this look good so I can then cover it in blood. You know what I mean? Like it's Stuff like that never. And I've been on other jobs. I remember I was on a high-profile TV show that dealt with a lot of blood, but also I remember they gave the department head of makeup a hard time about her list of people she could bring on. They would only allow a certain amount of additionals, but they didn't care about our department. So she just said, "Hey, you'll take the higher rate and you'll come in and just help me get the guys bloody." So that was awesome. Like, I got, my days, and I was just going in there and helping people get bloody. Mm-hmm. But because they would give our department an extra manpower. It's all like once they figure out those line items.
Politics.
They don't actually understand how it works. So they like in their head, it's like,
if anything, they paid me more. They could have got away with having someone do it cheaper, which made no sense. It's just because they didn't want one extra person in that department because they didn't budget for that. They didn't budget that 2 weeks ahead of time when they asked their manpower days, and then when you actually get it, we need 30 people covered. When they got the background advances, there's way more politics, there's way more moving parts the bigger the project is, which I've been lucky enough to work for other people, which, when I do my indie movies or my lower budget movies, I'm the boss. I do everything, I sculpt it, I mold it, I go on set when I can. These bigger movies, I work for other people, which I love because I don't need to,
It's a little stress gone.
And you probably get to learn more stuff too.
You can learn more stuff. You get to watch. But also you just do your job. Mm-hmm. Like I don't have to deal with when bigger stuff above me goes wrong.
Right.
Like you do your job, and I like that aspect of it. And again, I don't mind. I don't have an ego putting other people's appliances on. Some people don't like that. Like some people want to design it. When I first started in the union, I was trying to get jobs where I remember turning down 2 jobs. They were very small tier movies because they just wanted me to build the stuff and send it. Now, I was a little I hope my stuff's good enough to send, and I didn't want to send it because I'm like, all right, I know I can put it on. Mm-hmm. Also, I wanted the days.
Yeah.
Right.
I wanted the days, and if they weren't willing to give me that, I just didn't want to make the bullet hit. You can find a bullet hit anywhere, or a cut. It wasn't like I was asked to build huge things, but it was I wanted to put that on. I wanted to have that, that health and welfare day, the pension day, So for me, just to send a bullet hit, I wanted to do that. And I think, but now, is it boring sometimes sitting around all day while your guy he's just in the background laying dead? Sure, those days suck because I like to be busy. Mm-hmm. I like to keep going all day, and it makes your 14-hour day seem to go much quicker. But I'll certainly take the paycheck if the guy just sits in the back and he's, covered in blood and he's a bullet hit, and they're never going to see him. He could have been wrapped 4 hours ago, but they don't wrap him. But on those days, I'll take the paycheck. You know what I mean? I think you guys, we talked about it right before we started. At the end of the day, you're all having a beer at the end of the day and this would have been way better. I could have wrapped so many actors, in my opinion. They're never going to shoot that guy. Why doesn't the AD realize that? Yeah. Well, he's got plenty of other things to do. Right. And, there's also been times we've cleaned up an actor and they're like, oh, we could use him for the next shot.
Yeah.
Well, you can't now.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's over.
Yeah.
Do you... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to ask about... because now you have those days where it's boring and waiting around. Do you feel like there's more of those days now?
And I shouldn't say they're boring.
Well, okay, fine.
But all right, boring, but I mean, in your guys' job world, there's days.
It's slower. It's a slower day. Yeah, you're waiting
day.
around for something to happen. But I'm curious about do you feel like there's more of that now? Because in the last 10, 15 years, there's been a lot more use of CGI and digital effects. Do you feel like there's less for you to do on set now that a lot of productions?
No, I think the bigger the project, they can have a bigger, on a smaller movie, even tier movies, it's about time. Mm-hmm. You have to get, when you work on one of these big TV shows, there's, you're hired just for this one aspect. Mm-hmm. When I first started and I was working with Glass Eye, they did a couple smaller things where they would just literally bring me in for a bruise, which I thought was great because they're giving me a day.
Yeah.
They didn't need to do that. They just, they were cool. Nowadays, I don't always do that bruise because the makeup department is very talented. They can do that. If it's if it's three-dimensional bruise, if it's swelling, they bring us in. So there's plenty of projects that I wish I could be more hands-on, but that's not my department.
And you don't feel like CGI is taking some of these jobs away?
Sure. But not in the world I'm in. Like I'm not building these big, huge creatures.
Gotcha.
I'm not working on like a Hellboy or a Lord of the Rings or. Yes, there's definitely aspects. Like I've been on shows where we green screen a guy's half his face because that's going to be filled in. Also, if it's done well, I don't care.
Yeah.
It only bothers you when it's not done well. So
there's still some practical component.
There's always practical. Like as of right now, there will always, I'm not, my job, sure, it's a little bit in jeopardy, but it's not really in jeopardy. And when it comes to price points and this and that, like it's probably easier to get a background actor to lay on the ground dead than it is to create a whole fake body for 1 second of a shot. You know what I mean?
It's kind of like what you said. Like you had that movie that you shot on 35 that you were like, why are we? There's going to be weird purists that are, even if everything was digital, there's one guy that's going to want to do it the old way.
And I think, we're in a, we're just coming off strikes and where's our industry? And if you read like crew stories on Facebook and you're like, oh, we're never going to work again. And since I started, CG has always been the dirty little word in my world. I remember in school learning how to make a ball bounce on a computer. And I just said, I don't want to ever do this. This is never what I want to do. So I just didn't do any of the schoolwork, and the teacher was going to fail me and went around to all the other teachers I had and said, well, what's he doing in your class? And they're like, oh, he's great. He just doesn't agree with what you're doing. So did I fight it? Do I not like CGI? Sure. I mean, I also don't play video games, so I don't get half of that aspect of it either. So, sure, it's taken some of our artwork away. Some of it's made easier because of computers. But again, if it's done well, and we can all work together, there's always jokes nowadays. Like we work on a show I'm on now, we work very closely with the VFX department. Like anything we can do. And we make jokes. Hey, just make our stuff look better, or do we have to do all of this, or will you pick up half of it? Like, if I think about it, yes, it bothers me. But since I started, CGI has always been talked about, and I'm still working. If not, if anything, I'm working more. Sure, there's bigger aspects that are taken, but I'm not that big.
Yeah.
So it's not really affecting me at all. I'm a day playing makeup artist. That's been my dream job. Like I said, there's a million guys out there that run huge companies and can do this and work circles around me, can design better than me. My job is to make stuff look good on camera. So it hasn't really affected me in the small world I'm in.
Yeah.
Someday it will. I don't know if I'll be, we'll all be doing this, but it's going to, we spent the last 3-4 months hearing about AI.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's certainly taking over. I did Army of the Dead down in, I was very lucky to work on that. It was a big Netflix movie, and they were definitely scanning the actors and, so we knew there'd be digital enhancement to the makeups. Well, guess what? I still got the pictures to prove that I did those makeups.
Yeah.
And I think that's just where you got, where the world lives,
You didn't lose a day on set because of it. You were still there.
I was still there.
Yeah.
Now, our audience ranges from like really having a lot of experience to having no experience. And when you talk about, some of the special effects makeup and some artists that are trying to get into this department, where do they start off? Like if they get a union, like great, they just become union. Like, is there like a PA in this position in this department? Like, or your shop?
You work in a warehouse.
It's a different world. Like when I grew up, you worked for nothing.
Yeah.
It's harder to get people to do that. And I respect that we don't do that anymore.
Right.
But there was a lot of times, I've heard stories, I'd go sweep floors at this makeup lab, and that doesn't really happen anymore because I don't think it's allowed, and kids are a lot smarter now. You can't take advantage of the help anymore. But, have I underpaid people to help me out? Yes.
Yeah.
Have I always tried to give them something or do something a little out, offer them more work after they help me out? Yes. I think it's like, but you have to want it. And also you have to want it for the right reasons. Like, again, this is all I've ever wanted to do. So it's either this or I'm working retail on Christmas Eve or, I'm too old to dig a ditch anymore. So, like, it's one of those things my back just can't handle. So I don't think, like, you just have to have the drive, and you could weed those people out. So, like, I've definitely worked with people where, like, hey, come in and help me out and toss you a few bucks. You could tell somebody that's into it and somebody that's not. And you can figure out that because our hours, we'll all admit, can be crazy.
Yeah.
Deadlines are always, you're always working right up to your deadline. You know, it's like every job you could afford a few more dollars and a few more hours, and you're never going to get any of that. So you can weed the people out, like the people that are willing to kind of do all that and then put in the time frame. You know, it will happen. How to do this? There's a million schools out there now. There's a million websites that show you how to do things. Pick up a piece of clay. Pick up colors. Make up colors. There's a mirror and a table. That's all you need. Like, just go out and do that stuff. Practice on your own and make sure this is what you want to do. Like,
it's got to be pretty expensive to start in this. Is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I have a niece and nephew, and you know, at one point my niece was lit when she was friendly with me. She's a teenage girl now, so now she wants nothing to do with me, and I get it. But like, you know, she was into this aspect of it. My nephew the other day said, "Hey, maybe someday I want to do what you do." I was like, "No, don't." But I would love that. But you know, you have to really. I think in our world now, you have to really want to do this, and
especially to make the financial.
And there is a financial commitment. That, I mean, I will say, but clay and time. Time, you can paint, draw. You have to give yourself the time. It's more about the time management. Because again, make mistakes. My first sculptures suck.
Yeah.
The first prosthetics I did sucked. But you have to just get better.
Yeah.
And the only way to get better is to just keep doing it. Money is you know. But there's always a friend that's going to say, come over and do makeup. Like, I'll let you do this. Halloween, unfortunately, like Halloween, you know, when I was a kid, it was cool. I would do a bunch of friends or have people come over. We'd have parties. Nowadays, I don't do anything on Halloween. You know, that's like, you know, that's
One
my
day
day
off.
off. Yeah, it's almost offensive. Everyone's like, Halloween comes around, it's like, it's your time of the year. I'm like, I do this for a goddamn living.
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day. Every
Leave
day
me
is
the
like,
fuck alone.
you know, I will set up my yard and do put all my dead stuff around the yard and stuff like that. But that's me just because I just want to clean the house. And the only way to dust the house is to get all the shit out of the house. Yeah. But like, you know, you just have to want to do it.
Yeah.
I think that's like, I was talking to one of your other buddies. Was it Mike?
Mike, he's out there.
You just have to want to, like, it's a world where you have to know what you're getting into. Like, we have cool jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is a job.
Yeah.
Like, there's days that suck. Our bosses could be jerks one day. Production could be, you know, I don't want to throw producers under the bus. They had a lot of heat in the last couple of months. But we've all worked with a jerk producer.
Yeah.
We've all worked with directors that we just didn't agree with.
Yeah.
We've all done that. Like, it's still a job.
Yeah.
Like I said, I just hate driving to work. I hate that I live 40 to 50 miles away from every location, but it takes 2.5 hours to get there.
Yeah.
So, like, that's what they're really paying me for.
Yeah. And in your experience, you know, your years of experience working in this department, what are like the 5 essentials that you would like say are important to have for people working with special effects?
Like in terms of tools?
Like
or?
in terms of tools.
I think you have to have an eye and a little bit of talent. I think you can learn your talent too, though. I think if you just do it enough times, you can get good at it. I think you need, you need a makeup kit.
Okay.
You need some type of workspace. And that can be just a dining room table.
Yeah.
But, like, you need that space, and you need reference. You need to know what you're making, like, and I'm not, I've done it, like, you need to, like, I have to make this demon. Well, what is that demon?
Yeah.
I just got a script recently, and it was like, this guy burns to death. This guy gets stabbed to death. Well, that was the description. So now you have to kind of create that scene. You have to have a little bit of know-how. There's so much of my business that you have to know chemicals or ratios of this and mixing that. Like, but that's all you can learn. You can look that up. Like, I remember when I discussed foam latex, which again was another prosthetic. I remember when I was in school, they used R&D foam, which was a 3-part mixture. It was very easy. It was like you had A, B, and C, and exactly the same way. Well, when I graduated school, I got a job right away making this short film, and I go to order the foam. It doesn't exist anymore. So now the foam that they didn't teach us, you need a triple beam scale, the temperature in the room has to be a certain thing. And I'm like, what the hell? Like,
oh, shit.
The other way was you just drop these 3 little things in it, poof.
Yeah.
Now, maybe the foam wasn't as good, but I didn't know any better. Like, this is a better foam. Like, it's better, it's more prosthetic grade. I didn't know that. I didn't know, why isn't this working? Oh, my temperature isn't correct. Or I'm whipping it a little too much, or I put this too much. It had a gelling agent, so when everything would cure, that's how it would cure. It was you put the gelling agent at the last second. Well, I was putting the exact amount that it told me to. Well, and then it was setting up in my bowl, like mixing it, and and I'm like, well, so then all I did was put less in, and I was like, oh wow, that makes a huge difference. Don't follow the instructions. Now I don't even look at the instructions. It's all like in my head. I can tell by the smell of the ammonia if it's not working. So there's all that kind of, aspect. For years, like silicone, it can't touch certain things. Like certain things will not stick to silicone. You have to know, so there's a lot of things you have to know. You need to if you're going to start, you have to have the drive.
Yeah.
That's, I think, the biggest thing you have to have the drive, and you have to want it for the right reason. I don't care. Sure, we all love our Instagram likes.
Yeah.
But I don't need an Instagram like on a makeup, whereas some people do it seems, to put it out there. Where they think oh, wow. I remember I guess I insulted a couple students because I was like, you could do better. And I'm not trying to downplay what you're doing, but you can do better. And also, don't just take the picture against the white wall, because that's what everyone at school's pictures look like. Go outside, put it next to a tree, get some real lighting in there. Make it look cooler.
Yeah.
Like I found that, don't make it look like you took this picture at makeup school.
Yeah.
Because everyone else in their portfolio, we all start off you want to be able to work. We all have, portfolios to show what we've done. You want to be able that first makeup that you did you're so proud of, you want to be able to redo that or get that out of your book.
Yeah.
And have something new in there that's way better.
Yeah.
And I think it's just you just have to do it. You have to do it. You have to get on a set. You have to realize oh, I don't have 4 hours to do this makeup. I have to do this makeup in an hour. I'm gotten way better. That's probably my strong point. I can make a makeup look good in the amount of time that they'll give me.
Are there things like that where okay, I don't have 4 days, I've got 2 days, so you have to use a different material?
Sure. There's stuff like that, or there's stuff like I plan this whole elaborate makeup, and I only have this amount of time to put it on. Yeah. And again, they always give freaking time to fucking camera can set their lights up for 7 years. Oh, the camera didn't work. Oh, but we always seem to be rushed to get our things. So that's where I've adapted. I think I've gotten way better at is okay, what do you need to see in this time frame? Mm-hmm. I can make a makeup. A lot of times we can pre-paint something. We can do I did a makeup where I had much more elaborate things planned. Well, I just put half of it on. It still looked good. I just couldn't do the full thing because there was no way we were going to meet the time frame.
Do you think that's something that higher ups or anybody needs to really learn? Where a lot of the time, like you said, they give camera time, but it's if you're looking at the grand scheme of things, putting a lens on and moving a camera position, you do that every single day. If the biggest setup they're doing, they're setting it up. Everything you're doing is brand new on every single show. So it might be the first time you've ever done something. Do you think that special effects, anything like that, they don't realize what they're really asking you to rush?
Yes. They don't get the time management of it all. On paper it might work, but one little thing could throw that off. Also in the day, we decided to move our schedule around. You're going to be up first, or you're going to be, I've been called we need you on set now. I'm well, I'm 2 hours away.
Yeah.
You should have thought of that the day before, or we need this up front. It's always a time management. You're just chasing time to get everything now. On the bigger the project, same thing with the smaller projects, but smaller projects, you kind of know what you're walking into. You know everything's going to be a shit show. So some of that is fun. Like there is that, like I still love doing an indie movie simply because it's like I've never done SNL. I've never done that live TV or like it's sort of like live TV, the smaller the movie, because you're just like, all right, well, let's just throw everything in the kitchen sink at it. Like you plan more on the bigger projects. And I think sometimes you can plan it so much, but then just one little thing will show, throw it all off. Weather can throw, we lost our light and we need to shoot, so there's all that kind of stuff. Can we get this done earlier? And you can't say no sometimes when, the bigger the project. It's harder to say no. Sure, have we not gotten to things because of time and then had to come back? Sure. But then you just get another stab at it. Mm-hmm. I did tell the last project I want to shoot all of my actors out in makeup. Well, guess what? They met me on the 3 big ones. I still had to recreate makeups the next day. Maybe not as elaborate, but I still had to do something because I was like, oh, you couldn't just frame them out? And they're like, oh, I think we're going to see them. I'm like, you sure you can't just frame them out?
Wasn't that interesting? Hey, it's time for a shitty ad. Are you looking for the perfect gift for your perfect sweetheart? Well, we've got just the thing. Right now, we're giving our listeners 10% off on their next Shitty Rigs order. Just use the discount code LOVEISSHITTY at checkout to save on your order and save your relationship. Go to shittyrigs.com and order today. And now back to where the fuck we were talking about. Oh, and fuck you, Bert.
So there's always that aspect of things. And also, but the bigger the project, there's always issues. And it's usually time or some other aspect that came up. Mm-hmm. Threw us all off. That had nothing to do with us, but we're the ones that it falls to because we need to get the makeup done quicker.
Right.
So it's the same thing in every department. We just take our department way more seriously than you guys. And that's all it is. It's very much like, one minute I hate the camera department, one minute I hate this department. It's just all of us just we want our time. We all want our time to shine, and we all can have that aspect of telling the story where the other department screwed it up.
Well, you started to mention a lot of like some of the 3 basic ones I think you said was clay.
Well, just any type of art form. You need to have what you're going to make.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want to do? Like, do you want to make a zombie? Well, find me a reference of a zombie.
Yeah.
Now, nowadays you can buy the prosthetics already made, which I think you should learn how to make them. I don't think you should be able to buy a prosthetic until you actually know how to make one. But there are places that you can buy that and learn to paint it.
Is there something that's easier to start with, like burns versus stab wounds?
I recommend if you really want to be a prosthetic makeup artist is to pick up clay and a life cast or some type of head form and learn to sculpt and work in 3 dimensions because I think that will help you. I remember, when I was first starting clay, everything was so boxy and so square and it just didn't look real. And just research. Like, don't say you want to do a zombie until you really know what a million zombies look like.
Yeah.
And just, like Walking Dead is one great example, but there's a million other looks of that. And if you're going to steal or borrow ideas from those other things, like learn that. Like really study that aspect of it. Don't just think because you have your mom's makeup and a brush, you could be a makeup artist. Like there is some skill to it. There is some, you have to know some of the background of what you're starting with. But again, nowadays there's websites. There's so many things. But I think don't just read about it, do it. Like, oh, this is what I want to do. And you can go to a fancy school. You can go to places that'll help you learn. But the thing is just do it. Just as much time as you think you can put into it, put into it. It's really just giving time.
Yeah. Well, you brought us some creations today. Can you tell us a little bit about them?
Oh, these are just all little things that I have laying around the house. I mean, I made that for American Horror Story. There's skulls in here.
This one?
Made. Yeah. It was in a jar. You saw a little close up of it. I have skulls that I've made throughout the years. We had to make bones float in the water for this movie, We Are What We Are, so we just molded a bunch of foam stuff so it would float down the boat. I just have some zombie masks that I've fabricated throughout the years, whether it be for a movie, for a background piece, or then, and then when I'm done with it, I'm always doing stuff.
Yeah.
Like my day off, I will go down to the basement and make something. Like I just, I don't have to get paid to make something. I'm always probably a little ADD, so I'll start more things than I finish. I really do also think it's that repetition.
Yeah.
We're only as good as we let ourselves be. So you have to keep practicing. You have to I'll buy new paints or new makeups and just experiment with those and try to let me try this. I just love creating stuff.
Do your neighbors think you're like a serial killer?
Listen, I remember my neighbors think I'm totally freaking weird. Luckily, I've been there longer than them now, so it's screw them. But I remember had an actor show up, and I have to do a life cast. So you do, you take a casting material and you cover their face, and then you put a jacket over it, a plaster bandage jacket, so you get a perfect impression of their face. Well, there's this dude, he pulls in my driveway, and I'm like, all right, he's here. I don't want to be that weirdo. He pulls in my driveway, open the door. So I'm like, all right, what's he doing? He's out there smoking a joint. I don't really care about that, but I live in suburbia. So they're sitting in my front driveway, all my neighbors, there he is blowing a joint. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ. They already think I'm, now I'm the drug dealer in the neighborhood. And he comes in, then he has a panic attack and can't do the life cast. And I was like, hey, dude, you have to come back because we have to get this done. Right. So I was like, next time, just don't get high.
Yeah, that's kind of a weird situation to want to be like.
Look, you're a guy that doesn't even know my industry, and you're like, yeah, I don't know if I do that. That's exactly what I was like, dude, just don't come back and get high. You can get high right after.
Yeah, take the acid before you show up next time. We'll see how that goes.
I had another woman, I had to do a chest cast of her. Well, we were doing it in a back room of the house. She just opened the door and went outside topless. I didn't care. But again, I got neighbors, and I don't care. And I'm just like, she was like, oh, I don't mind. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm sure some people showed up. I also had, one time I helped out Dee Snyder from Twisted Sister. He had needed some stuff, and he came over to my house. So all my neighbors in their windows were like, whoa, 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 because they're all older. They were like, holy crap, that's Twisted Sister at my, so there's sometimes some cool things.
Who the hell is this fucking guy Brian over here?
And then every year, like I said, to give back so they know that I'm not a psycho, I do my whole yard up with lights and everything for Halloween, and I give out candy to little kids, and it's more of an R-rated yard. If anything, people get scared just because there are eviscerated bodies in my front yard. I had another dude once complain that I had a dead body in the yard. He didn't know that it was his daughter that I was just hit up on Facebook. Hey, I need a topless woman to get slaughtered. Do you mind? And so she came up and I cast her body. And, he doesn't know that he was complaining about his own daughter's body.
Oh, my God.
So there are, but, I also am the yard that hey, man, let's go to the guy's house at Halloween that never takes down his Halloween decorations. Yes, I work right in my front driveway. I'm proud of what I do.
Yeah.
I understand it's gross and sick at times, but there is I made it all. It's my art form. Ripped out intestines, I don't want to use sausages for that. I sculpt my intestines and try to, make them look like intestines being ripped out. I try to make everything look as cool as it can. So I love what I do. But yes, all this crap that's here that I brought over is just in my house. So yeah, I have people come over. I mean, now we do it at the shop, but I have my shop basement. So a lot of times I would have tons of people come over and we would do life casts. And
I was gonna say, is there technology that's as advanced that has helped you in this industry?
When I started making life casts, we would use the same, a similar stuff to what you would get from the dentist when you would get your teeth cast for braces. It was called an alginate. Now we use a silicone material, which is once it's on, you can when the alginate, once you take your positive, they call out of the negative, you take your positive head cast out, which would give you that head, you'd have that positive of that. The algin is ruined. You get one use out of it. Now there's a different material where it might take a few minutes to set up. It's a little longer, but it's more permanent. You can reuse it again. You not reuse it again, but you can rerun the mold again.
Right.
So yes, there's tons of aspects of. I used to have to make molds out of fiberglass. Wow. Which is not, the greatest thing,
Yeah.
Did I oh, I forgot to open the garage door, so now the entire house smells like. Now I'm smarter. I will still have to use it. We'll go outside and make sure that that's appropriate.
What
But
do you
there's
do
different materials now that
Yeah.
don't need it. They do the same properties
Yeah.
of making that mold. So there's safer materials to use.
Yeah. Why would you use fiberglass for anything? Like
It's just to make molds.
To be used where and what?
If I have to make a body mold or a prop mold, I would like to get the finished mold. Like when I first started, probably to my detriment, I made a lot. Like we would make cement molds. It's usually an UltraCal 30 or HydroCal 30 mold or jacket. That stuff's heavy.
Yeah.
Especially like when you first are like, I need this to last my entire career. So what could have been an inch, you make 6 inches, and now there's 2 pieces of that, and there's something in the middle. You're like, oh my god, like. So now there's just different materials that do that same principle that I can get my molds out of and pour my positives into that are just way more, they're just friendlier to your back, friendlier to everything. So it's just that aspect of it. Everything gets better. A lot of our materials in sense are, same as like a building material. So, things have improved over the years.
Is there a place where people can go to find all this stuff?
You can go to in New York, there's Manhattan Wardrobe Supply that has a lot of makeup supplies. Alcone is another one, and The Complete Sculptor are all 3 places that I use. There's all their ones in LA like Friends Beauty, Nigel's, there's other huge, Smooth On is another, you could look them up. But I mean, I get a lot of my materials right from The Complete Sculptor there in New York City. And like, yes, you have to know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And you have to go there one day and just check it out and like see what you need. There's so many materials that we could do a whole show just on materials that we use.
Right.
But like when you get into it, there's tons of makeups. There's cream makeups. There's alcohol makeups. There's certain types of, you can make your own blood. You can buy blood. You can buy blood that doesn't run, that doesn't stain. You can buy blood that, once it's on, it'll like dry up but not move, and it'll still look good. You hit it with a little water, like everything looks great. There's always these materials. So to give a list of materials, or and that's part of our job. You have to learn. And then what I would say, if you were starting out, production never knows what you need. You will get a budget, and they will tell you they never have enough. Always get something that you don't know how to use. And like maybe you can learn how to use that after the job's done. Don't ever buy something that you don't know how to use on the job, because you won't know how to use it and it won't come out right. Yeah. But I always like, they're not paying me what I'm worth. Well, then I'll add a few more supplies, because they don't see, I can't afford your rate, but I can, what supplies are unlimited. Well, all right, well then you don't know what I need. I'm going to order a little extra here and a little extra there. I'll make it up that way. That's how I did it in the beginning. I would literally, build my kit off the jobs. Like if I knew I wasn't making money. Also, sometimes, you take that job just to get that one picture. I want to do this one makeup.
Yeah.
I never get hired to make somebody old. So I want to do this movie where this guy gets old. Cool. I want to do this one because it has a monster. I don't know how I'm going to do that monster yet, but I know I'm not going to get the amount of money that I wanted it, but like I get to do that makeup. As long as I get 3 great pictures, I'm fine with doing that job. So there's aspects which are, you will bend over a little bit more. You will take it a little bit more in the earlier part of your career. Mm-hmm. I will not do as many jobs now because I don't need to. And that sounds very selfishly, but it's also like, I think we all know we want our own time. We want some me time. And, this jobs that we have can take up, a lot of our lives too.
Yeah.
So it's like, I need to pay my bills now, like I probably wasn't as smart financially the younger I was, because I just wanted to do this so much. I did a couple things around the house and fixed that up, and I did certain things now that I want to maintain that lifestyle. I don't need to chase as much work as I used to. And I think that's a good spot to be in. But when you're first starting, don't say no to anything and try to do as much as you can.
Yeah.
I have a very specific question about blood. if you're like shooting on these indie projects and you're probably shooting in someone's house, do you make a mixture that's like safe to clean off, or is there one?
Yes, there are bloods you can buy that are better, but I'm also a jerk in the sense that you don't pay me to clean up. You pay me to make the mess.
Got it.
So I'm not like, I can do the best I can to order the bloods that aren't going to stain, that aren't going to do this, but I don't care anyone that says their blood doesn't stain. You put that in wood grain, you put that in like the granules of a rock face. I can't promise anything.
Yeah.
If all the actors are in white shirts, I can promise you it will come out. Ish. Yeah. Like, you know, there have been issues, you know, like where we can't get this location bloody. Well, why are we there then?
Yeah.
You know the script that we're doing. Also, oh, we can't get this dirty, but the director wants an explosion. Well, what am I supposed to do? Not give the director what he wants, or have another department angry at me?
Yeah.
Now, again, usually the higher the budget, it's easier to, you know, there's a locations department. They've worked it all out. Like, you know, they've figured out how to cover everything so it's perfect. Usually, you know, have I ever been involved in a movie where they shot at their buddy's house and we've ruined their walls? Yes.
Shit.
I mean, it's just you shouldn't have let your buddy shoot at your house, you know? So we've
So
all
much
been
being for good friend.
Oh man.
But again, and that's, I mean, I said it before, I can't control where blood goes if we're shooting it out of something.
Yeah, yeah.
So we can plan and plan and plan, but, you know, there's always that oh shit moment. I mean, I've been on movies where, you know, the equipment truck backed into boats and ruined boats at a marina. Like, you know, that happens, you know, and like, that's expensive, you know, like that, you know, we all have a story where, you know, somebody on an equipment truck that probably shouldn't have been in the equipment truck backed up and hit a car. Like that's stuff that happens.
Yeah.
BT's the one that ran over too.
You scraped the wall on the fucking side of the truck.
But see, that's the same as me getting blood all over a floor. Like it happens. It happens.
Yeah.
Like, you know, in a better, you know, they should have given you enough room. That idiot shouldn't have parked that close.
Right.
It's not my fault.
No. Just to go back a little bit, like you were saying, like sometimes you've cleaned up early, and then like fuck it, like if and when they give you time to kind of redo something, do you bring extras of like all the prosthetics? And if you do, how many extras do you kind of plan for?
I will always try to go with exactly 2 pieces. Like if that day we're putting a swollen cheek, I want 2 swollen cheeks. Because sometimes, you know, you line it up and you screw up the application. So you have to ditch that one. Or it's just good to have that, you know, you don't want to be backed in the corner where you can only do it once.
Yeah.
The last movie I did, we only did it once. So I knew that was going to happen. So I threw every piece I had onto the guy. And I said, "Are you sure?" And they said, "Yeah." And that worked out to that, you know, to our advantage. I was like, "Yes, I have 3 for the other victim. So, yes, we could do that one tomorrow again if you want." I don't want to do it again. And I did it again. But you know, this one, I'm throwing everything on it. So don't ask for this tomorrow. And they, you know, they work. And I made it a better makeup, I think. Like,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of times it's manpower. I need an extra person. Well, we don't want to pay for that extra person. Well, then it's going to take longer to get this person in.
Yeah.
You know, isn't it better to pay the extra $1 and then the actor gets out too earlier? You know, like you don't have your
You
actor.
save money. On
Yeah,
that
so
end.
and those are all, you know, the bigger the budget, they gotta, you know, you have to have a turnaround, you know. You have to make sure we get this person out and, you know, can you assure me that you're going to clean them up in a half hour? I hope so.
Right.
I can't assure anything. That's the other thing. And I think it's all of our industry. Like you can't, in theory, the answer is always yes, but practicality of it, like, you know, he's covered in blood. I got to clean all that off. Yeah. So I have to clean that off before I can actually get the pieces off. Oh, you have no hot water at this location. That makes things even harder. You know, like, so there's another, you know, we don't have trailers on this movie. We're just, you know, I'm doing the makeup on the back of a Datsun.
Yeah.
So that makes a huge difference. So it's all those things that like all line up. But I think too is every job you do, you're like, oh, all right. Some days it's easier, you know, like because all those mistakes happen in the beginning, and all those mistakes happen, or those little things happen still on the bigger days. So you get used to like all that stuff. Like if you're willing to help me out in some aspect, I will certainly help you out in another, like production out in another aspect. Like it's a give and take.
Give and take.
For some of our people that are starting out in the industry that are wanting to get into this, I'm curious about like what would you recommend as, you know, for them for like recipes for making blood? Like give me like, is there like a cheap version, and then talk to me about like the more expensive version and what are the benefits of, you know, either?
I mean, you can buy bloods now.
Okay.
You can go to any one of those. My buddy Josh Torrey makes his own blood formula. It's called No Trace Blood. It's very popular, especially in wardrobe departments, because it doesn't stain, and he seems to. It definitely is good. Like it does its job, and it definitely washes out of clothing, which makes a lot of wardrobe people very happy, and actors that have to wear it the next day very happy. There are other products called like Fleet Street Bloods, which are a little bit more expensive, and they're called. They have a lot of staying power where you can paint it on, and it'll kind of stay there the whole day. It won't move on you. You have to be careful that it doesn't peel up. But on all my movies, if I can, I always try to make my blood, and I just use a simple Karo syrup and food coloring formula. I don't necessarily have this formula measured in my head.
Just do it by eye.
Sure. I have a formula at home. What it is right now, I can't think of it
Well, it's a good thing we brought in the products. Come on.
But it is just your standard, like a Karo syrup. It's just a cornstarch syrup, corn-based syrup, and we just use food grade dyes. And then I tend to use, you're definitely using a lot more red. And you're doing, you'll mix in some greens. Some people do some blues, yellows. I always pick up a Buckeye Brown dye, which I find it helps, I like my blood a little darker. And I know you just need to start to experiment just by eye and a paper towel. Like you don't want it to appear pink when it hits anything white. You need it to have its staying powder. Like you almost want that opacity. So the more dye you use, usually the better, it can be. Now, the problem is the more dye you use, the more staining it can do. So you have to find that medium there. But it's really, you're just cutting it with water, hot water, and Karo syrup and a couple different food colorings. Of course, red being the most prominent and the most, it's like drops of browns or greens or yellows. It's not a lot of those colors, but you're using quite a bit of red.
Yeah.
And it's just simply a sugar, it's a sugar-based formula, so it will dry and it will get sticky.
Yeah.
There's positives to that, but also it's usually food safe, so it's, easily can be ingested. I don't recommend eating that much sugar. It does have some, effects the next day that you can laugh about. But it's just a trial and error. If color, like people tend, when they make it, it's too watery. You can almost see through it. You just need to mix a little more red in there, a little more color, and whip it up. Also, it's the consistency. You don't want it to be straight up like what the consistency of a syrup is. You need to find that balance, that middle ground where you add a little bit of water. Sometimes we have to do gags where the blood explodes out. So you're watering it down. So if anything, you're using more dye than you are syrup, if you think about it, because it needs to go through tubes and be pushed out. So the benefit of that is, or the negative to that is, if it hits something, it might not be as strong on the wall. So you have to convince your guys, you got to cut right away, and then we'll go in and jazz it up. You can easily buy all of this easier. Like you can buy Flow Blood. You can buy things like that at any one of those makeup stores, Alcone, Manhattan Wardrobe, Complete Company. So you can buy it, but I think you have to learn how to. I think in any of my industry, you can buy things. Yeah. You can buy prosthetics, pre-made. You can buy silicone appliances, pre-made, already done. They'll be generic, so you might have to, buy two things to see if it's going to, this swollen eye, I don't know if, it might be too big for the actor, it might be too small, so you might have to buy two of them. But you can buy everything. I'm not going to say that, there's no need to ever, you might be in a situation where you have to, because of turnaround, and to have to buy a pre-made prosthetic, pre-made appliance, pre-made Bondo transfer. But I do stress that if you buy it, you should know how to make it. Like
Yeah.
you should know how.
You know how to work with the material.
Yeah, and there's you could just type in Google like Dick Smith's blood formula. Dick Smith was the godfather of our industry. He did The Exorcist, he did The Godfather, he did The Sentinel, did Little Big Man. Grew up in, or didn't grow up, but he lived in Larchmont, New York, was like one of the founding members of the makeup department for NBC TV. Like he is the granddaddy of all of this. Plus he had a makeup course that you could take. And, you know, you would talk, he, you know, won an Oscar for Amadeus. You know, he transformed, you know, people. He changed our industry. And he was the one great thing about Dick Smith is he shared all his information. So, like, he was never one of these guys where it's a secret. I can't tell you. I can't tell you that we just used corn syrup and food coloring. Like, he has other stuff, like to make it flow better on the skin, he would put photo flow, which I wasn't very familiar with it. Plus, it's kind of a chemical. So I found out dish soap works the same way, or has a similar where the blood won't bead up on you, on skin. So you add a little bit of soap. Now you have to definitely label things so you're not putting soap in someone's mouth.
Yeah.
But other than that, I tend to always, you know, you just got to label mouth blood or topical blood.
Right.
You know, a little mouth blood, we might throw a little like Listerine in there just so it has that minty, fresh taste because it really just is sugar.
I don't know if you know the actual answer to this, but like I've heard that the color of your blood can help determine the rating. Like if it looks more realistic,
I remember because it's one of the top 10 movies of all time, but it's Evil Dead 2.
Okay.
Evil Dead 2 is the greatest movie in the world, in my opinion. You know, it's right up there, and it's half the reason I'm doing what I do. And the MPA would frown, like they had scenes where just geysers of blood. Well, they made them, I think in the first movie they had problems with like the X rating because so much blood was flowing out. So they just changed it to black or to green, or they just changed it. That I think is a little bit more of a fallacy because if you think about like Kill Bill, like
yeah. That's why I never really put it. So I wasn't sure if it was like the realism.
I think it's the realism of like there was rumors that Taxi Driver, Dick Smith did Taxi Driver, that he had Scorsese tint the final frame in that whole when he goes up into the pimp's house when he saves Iris at that whole aerial shot when De Niro does the whole he tinted the film red to take away some of the blood. Because back then, I mean, nowadays, no, I don't think there's as much of an issue because we as the audience is so desensitized. Like, think about it, like, and when everyone watched The Exorcist when they were growing up, for me, that was a rite of passage movie. Nowadays, people might find, I don't think it's a boring movie, but in the aspect that you can do so much in a video game, you're seeing so much more bloodshed or what have you. The audience has caught up where that might look a little dated.
Yeah,
so I think violence, and I think that's the thing. Like nowadays, we want to see that blood. If it's done cool and operatic, I think it's more like they're not going to give Tarantino as much of a hard time about limbs being chopped off because it is so fantastical when it's happening. Like one of the scariest movies I ever saw was called Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. And it's just a low-budget John McNaughton film starring Michael Rooker before he was like, in The Walking Dead or in Days of Thunder. It was just he played a serial killer, Henry Lee Lucas, and it was like a dark movie because you barely saw gore. It was the tension of it all. And I think nowadays, that's a whole other aspect of filmmaking, but like that movie was so violent in its thoughts, and we hadn't seen a movie like that. I didn't think The Exorcist was the scariest movie alive, but if you go back and watch YouTube reviews of people walking out of the theater and hearing, they say when Tarantino, the ear cutting scene in Reservoir Dogs, people passed out and all this other stuff, and it was but nowadays that's like you watch it now and you're like, oh, that's not that big of a deal because we're so accustomed to so many things.
Desensitized.
We're just used to it. So I think there are movies that, yes, push the boundaries and, I'm not, there are movies I've only watched it once, the Serbian film, which, is way over the top gore and it does things to children and, I don't necessarily need to watch those movies just for the ooh factor, and I don't really work on anything that needs to push that level, although we want the violence to be as violent or as within the story, I would rather have a shocking moment. I've always liked more realistic gore or violence just because I would rather you shy away from looking at what I do. That means the story-wise, it's working more than the aspect of it. Like the movies I grew up were sort of, tongue-in-cheek and, like I said, it was like a Freddy Krueger 6 or 7. You know what I mean? By that time, even the violence or the gore was, I don't want to say a joke, but was like, part of the joke.
It was a little campy, yeah.
Yeah, it was a little campier. I've always loved movies where they're like, you do want to look away. Like David Fincher, I think, does gore excellent. Like, he always has a shocking moment in there. And I would like to see the pain brought back into it, but the pain is more the storytelling than just, anyone can throw tons of blood on something and have it geyser shooting out. And I'm not opposed to an over-the-top makeup effect if it works for that story.
Right.
Yeah. So you like getting that visceral reaction from stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I think desensitize. I want you to be sensitive to what we do. Like, I think that's better storytelling, but that's just the movies I like better. I don't mind violence, but I also don't want violence just because it's cool. Like,
do you have a favorite effect that you've done then? Like one that stands out as like, this was the perfect one we did. Like,
this got
a
that
movie
reaction.
called The Mind's Eye, which might be available like on Shudder or something. And it was a telekinetic movie, but we shot we did so much. We split guys, we blew guys up. The physical effects guys came in and blew things up, blew bodies up, we blew heads up. We ripped off scanners where you stick a shotgun in the back of the head and just have blood packs in there, and it blew up, and we shot it safely. I mean, everything was done correctly. But we did these aspects. But there's a scene where a guy just gets his knee shot. We just had like a fake limb where he kind of sticks his leg out, is like he's putting his knee on another fake knee, and it just bends out. And I thought that was such a great gag just because it just was so quick. I've done cool makeups. I've done a couple Frankenstein looks. So like makeup wise, those were really cool makeups to do where it was a whole a dude, and we did another one where it was a short film, and it was like a woman. She had 2 dicks, and she had 18 nipples, and she was bald and had all this crazy look. And, it was a cool makeup. It wasn't like a gag. Gags, I hate gags because I think we talked a little bit while we took a quick break. Gags are, in the world where I'm in now, either I'm pulling the trigger on the gag or a physical department. A lot of that we can overlap. I like it when the physical department takes it over, because if they screw it up, it's like, I'm like, hey, we could have done a better job. It was just this. It was just that. And I'm sure they feel the same way when we do it. It like alleviates, because a lot of times when you're doing a blood gag where blood has to be shot at something, there's much more timing involved. It's like, 3, 2, 1, everything has to go. Are we going on 3 or are we going on, and it's all that, like, everything has to happen at the same time or at the right time. And you just don't want to screw up, because then you just get blood everywhere and the reset. A bigger the project, you have more time to reset.
Yeah.
We've done things, bigger jobs where, we have to move this whole wall to get this one gig. And then if you screw it up and then like now we have to figure out something else to shoot and the wall's already removed. No, we gotta clean this up. Like, it's all a lot of stress when everything has to happen at once, or you only have one time at it. But a lot of that is just trial and error, and I think it's also the more you do, you get used to these things. You know how to do things. I mean, we just did gags the other day, and we just used a huge giant syringe, and like we brought all our other fire extinguishers that can explode blood. We had air compressors that we could rig tubes up to, but we found, because of time, a syringe and a tube just solved everything. As long as the camera was in the right spot, it gave the same effect. So there's a lot of that. Like, you can build a bigger gag, but the more stuff that goes into that gag, the more elements that we add into it, well, it's a timing thing too. You know what I mean? Like, and that, I try to stay away from gags, but we're always going to do gags. You know what I mean? I also think working with other departments, you figure out what they do, and you're like, oh, I'll steal that idea from them. I'll steal this idea. Oh, that worked really well for them. I'm going to try that. You know, I also don't have all the equipment. Like those guys have trucks full of things that can make things blow up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did a movie years ago, and my whole thing was there was a guy that went through a wood chipper.
Yes.
Well, I have only ever done gags with compressors, and this time I had to buy giant like nitrogen tanks, and like just to turn on at the right time so blood could spray out. Because I never had to get what appeared to be that was never my department.
Yeah.
But I was hired to do that, so I got to figure it out. So we had to do that on.
Yeah, actually, just to give context for that scene, so basically it was like two guys that were working with a wood chipper.
And one guy falls into a wood chipper and blood just shoots out
on the other guy.
Onto the other guy.
Which film is this?
It was called Graveyard at the time.
yeah,
I think they changed it to Amok.
Wow.
Yeah, but that was the film I met BT on, and I met you on. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was like, and it was a small little movie. So like the smaller movies, they don't have a department. My department is special effects, and they're like, oh, well, I've been called to do rain gags, and I'm like, no. I just, I'm more of a makeup guy, but some of that aspects earlier on, you do bullet hits in the back of the head. I remember we did another movie with BT, and it was a movie called Bitter Feast, and the producer was Larry Pheasant, and he came up with the idea. We were freaking out because they needed to get blood to hit a window. The guy's driving away, like it's his, like, and you're gonna see the girl come up in the back frame of the window, and from the camera, they'll cut away, and then they just need to see blood hit the thing. So I had, a compressor, a tube. I built a little rig so PVC pipe, it would shoot right out onto the window.
Wow.
But now I have to be in the back of the car with the camera, with the director. And Larry just leaned over and said, what happens if we just put blood in the guy's mouth and he spits on the thing? And I was like, oh my God, why didn't I think of that? So that was simply an easy effect. And boom, just spit on the window and it looked great. And we got out of it and it was one take and it worked out great because he was right there to do it all.
Right.
So you have to work together with every department to figure out what's the easiest way to do something. And again, there's a lot of stress with that. Because it's the resets.
Yeah.
Because in all our business, there's always some type of gag where a reset happens, and then the reset means you have to do it all over again. Whether we ruined an outfit, take two is always, sure, it sometimes comes out better, but it's like, oh my God, to get to take two, the guy has to go shower. Mm-hmm. So there's all those aspects of everything.
In those aspects of the department, what are the titles in the department? In levels, so you say you don't have a PA, but is there an assistant special effects?
I mean, usually like there's your department head, and then there's your key effects artist, and then there's just people on set. I've done sometimes in that department you'll have puppeteers, there's a ton of different people, but usually it's an applicator. You have your key and you have your makeup artist. It's not like a huge department. The more, if there's, we need this to happen, you might bring more people in that are specific to this. I don't deal with animatronics, but the minute you do with animatronics, you do have your puppeteers, you have your guys that know how to do all that mechanical stuff and all the computer stuff that sets all the little remote controls up. So there are bigger aspects to what we do, and I was lucky enough to do some makeup work on Smile and got to watch ADI, who did. They're known for doing Tremors and the Aliens movies. They made the big creature at the end, and that was just cool to see how they made that, and it was all rod puppeted, meaning they just have rods moving aspects and green screen aspects of it.
That movie was terrifying to me, and I'll tell you why. Is because in the theater, when she first smiled, someone airdropped everyone a fucking photo of the smile. Yeah, and I was like, oh man, this is fucking scary.
I thought the sound design helped that a lot too. That was very freaky because I took my young niece and nephew because I was like, hey, this is one of the first big movies I had in a movie theater. I've always had movies screen, a Tribeca or the IFC Center, but this was I can go to the mall and see this movie.
Yeah.
And I remember my nephew being right when the credits were starting to roll, I think he was 8 or 9 at the time, and probably shouldn't have been at the movie, but you know. But he was like, "Oh my God, we got to go." And I'm like, "Wait, it's the credits, you idiot. We're not leaving. My name's coming up, you dumbass. Like, this is the whole reason I took you guys here."
Watch it.
And he was like, "Oh," he was all freaking out, putting his, just because of the music. And I think that's like another key aspect to a lot of like horror movies and stuff like that. But I just thought that was hilarious because I'm like, no, this is the whole reason I'm here, man. Like,
look for my name. Look for my name.
yeah, like,
And there it is. All
There
right,
it is. And we can go now.
well, it went a little slower because it wasn't TV, you know.
Earlier you mentioned a life cast. You were
Yes.
talking about life cast and like molds and stuff. I'm curious, like, because I have no idea what. Could you tell me? Can you explain to me what that is?
All right, a life cast is you're looking for an impression. Say we're going to make an actor into a zombie.
Okay.
So you have to sculpt those appliances that you will then mold and float off and make into appliance pieces. And also it's specifically made for that actor. You need to life cast them so that there's a material. You get, a body double material, and you will literally cover them. You leave their nose holes open, and it is literally you are taking a perfect impression down to every pore. If they have a pimple that day, it shows up. Like if they have scar, an old scar, it is down to every pore in their face. It is an exact replica of that. So it's a material you would put on it, drips right over, and it's like gives that impression. And then you do your what we call a beauty coat or a drip layer. It's a very thin layer, and you get that on. Then you thicken each layer up to get a thick consistency, and then you would take a plaster bandage jacket. You would then enclose it in two halves. So this person, if you do a full head cast, they're completely enclosed, usually from, chest up and completely enclosed. So, sometimes people are, if you have a claustrophobia, there's issues. I've had issues with that in the past, but very few. I've always had good life casts. Also, if you're doing it right, you have a couple people. You're always doing it, very rarely are you doing it by yourself. I've done it by myself. It can be done, usually not a full head. But as long as you have somebody on the nostrils, people will tell you, oh, they put straws in their nose. Like I've never, ever, ever, ever done that. I don't know anyone that's ever done that. But it's every actor says, oh, yeah, they stuck straws in my nose. Maybe it happened in the 40s. It never happened in anything that I've ever learned, unless some idiot does it on a YouTube video and then don't know what they're doing. But it is literally a perfect impression. It takes a while. Like it could take
hours?
Oh, the material itself sets up pretty quickly. Like so, you don't have as much time, but you have 20 minutes. Somebody's underneath there for a half hour, 40 minutes.
Wow.
Now, the more you need, you could do their whole body. You can do, I've done hands, we've done feet, we've done full body, and it's just literally putting this material on, it peels off. Like it's
You don't have to cut it off. It literally just comes
well,
off.
you cut, if it's completely sealed, yes, you're cutting it off the back and peeling it and they're popping off. It's not like, whoop, it pops right out. It's not like in the movies. It's not like they do it in Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah.
That is, it's not how it is in theory how it happens, but it's not that quick. It's not in like a 30-second montage. It will take a while, and the more people you have, and the better the prep is, and the more you can get a perfect cast. And usually, like everything we do, we have to sculpt and mold. So that's the stuff that's very important because that's going to get you a perfect your positive piece, your final piece that you're going to use.
Yeah.
The more time you put into making a good mold, a good positive that you have to work off of, all that's going to help you make your pieces better.
Yeah.
And, depending whether you do a foam or a silicone, any material like that. But you always start with some type of cast, some type of life cast. And it's really just, it's literally the same thing that the doctor or the dentist would use for your teeth.
Yeah.
But on a much bigger scale.
Obviously, you need some experience to like mold it and stuff. But is it pretty easy to work with? Or
It's an A and B material. So you have A and B. When they make it even easier than that, they make one color like pink and one color blue. So when you mix it together, it turns purple. So your material's been mixed. The more you do it, you'll get used to like, oh, I need 8 ounces of A, 8 ounces of B. It's usually a 1-to-1 ratio. They make it very simple. Before the other materials, like it'd be like 6 cups per 12 cups of water. Like it was more like math.
Yeah.
This they make so simple now. It is like they have other ones that are more hair safe. That's supposedly come out with, like I could do your face with a beard.
Yeah, I would never.
You would get a tug on there, but it would still come out of you. Like you would have an impression of you. I've done it plenty of times.
How does the positive come out of that then? Do you have to cover it up?
Then I have to cut out the beard.
Okay.
I would have to cut, like I did a werewolf movie, Blackout, Larry Fezzik movie, and when the actor was cast, he had a beard, and he needed that beard for another show, and so I just then would have to when I made my cast of his face, when I made that positive, I then had to sand that all off to get as close to I could to what his face would look
That's something
like.
I like. I mean, this is so random, but like I've scuba dived before, and to get the like Vaseline, is that something like that helps that kind of thing?
You would Vaseline or there's products that you would use. They have a hyperfolic that you would mix in. What it is it pulls out of your hair. That doesn't mean, because we've done plenty of guys' chest hairs. And they'll be like, "No, I don't want to shave my chest." And we're like, "I think you should shave your chest," because we're actually not taking any hair out. It's just that it gets all around, and then it's just pulling it through. So you don't lose hair. You just, and men are much more not used to that. So usually men are much more wussies when it comes to that stuff. And
I say we just cut Bert's beard off. Let's just fucking do it.
I mean, that the funny part is I have to, if I was to make a fake head, I would have to remove the beard.
Yeah.
And then I would have to painstakingly like punch all those hairs in as well. So it's like, oh my God. Like,
Right.
And now every day, everybody has a goddamn beard or mustache. Oh, I gotta have for production. Just makes our job so much,
Have you ever damaged like a cast because you've had to like sand stuff down? And then
No,
have to do it over?
again, using this other material, the best part of that, the silicone life casting material that we have now, you can if you screwed up, you could pour another cast of it and get it. You try not to. I mean, sure, have I maybe taken off 1/8 of an inch? Sure.
Yeah.
But trial and error. Like I've screwed up more like when it was the old way with the alginate, just because, alginate would shrink after a while. So if you didn't fill it right away, it would slightly
Less forgiving.
it would actually like get smaller.
Oh, okay.
So you don't want to wait very long. You got to do that pretty quickly, So it was, there's definitely aspects, I've screwed up everything. Like I've made mistakes on all of that stuff. Any material, I've mixed blood wrong. I've mixed, materials wrong. But, again, it happens once. And then you learn to adapt, and not make those mistakes again. Because usually when you start out, that's costing you money.
Right.
Yep.
Like you're like, oh God damn, I used all that material and I didn't get what I wanted. And I'm like, all right, I got to figure, so you don't make those mistakes more than a couple times.
When you talk about like, small prosthetics and small effects versus large effects like this life cast, do you have like any extreme exciting ones that you did that you're most proud of, or the most challenging ones you've ever done?
I mean, we did, personally, I've done makeups that have taken like 6 hours because of the amount of pieces we're putting on people. And we've had 3 or 4 people helping out. I've been involved in huge makeups where, maybe I was only helping out with the one corner of it, but they were huge creatures, And that's amazing to get to watch that stuff. I did a movie up in Massachusetts called Black Friday. And we shot in an old Babies R Us. And the guy that he was in charge of the makeup, Josh Torrey, was handling the fabrication of the appliances, but the designer was Bob Kurtzman. Now, Bob Kurtzman was part of K&B Effects, but he also, he worked on The Evil Dead 2. He's a huge legend to me, one of the reasons I do what I do, because he was one of those guys in those magazines I used to read about. Wow. And I got to watch him, but he had, he's got huge industry friends, and I'm getting to put on creature suits by the guys that made Hellboy, the guy, So, yes, I mean, I don't necessarily make big, huge creatures, but to get to do that, we did plastic bag stuff where these embryo things would grow, and it was just plastic bags. And it was the same guy that was, designed stuff for Ghostbusters. He designed, he's the guy in the State Puff, and he created all these embryo type sacks that could breathe, and it was just all this plastic bag and KY jelly, and and he was using shop vacs to turn on and turn off, and we had other types of syringes that were blowing things up, and it would go from a little plastic bag that was all painted. I mean, it didn't look like a plastic bag, but he used that material to make these things, and you'd hurt the air on it, and it would just grow right before your eyes.
Wow.
And it was these big, huge things.
Would you say there's a pretty decent aspect of what you do that falls under the shitty rig category? Like you just fucking experiment until
you find what works. Like
there's not always a this is it. Like we're gonna find
there's always the right way to do things, and then there's the way to get the thing done for what you have to get done. Okay. You know what I mean? You can build something, but sometimes it is that simple of like, oh, a 2-minute syringe will solve everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We've had to make, where like, there's always a transformation scene. It started in the 80s. Dick Smith, Rick Baker, all these guys, Rob Bottin, they used bladders, which is just, you're just tubing up, think of balloons or condoms underneath somebody's appliance, and it would just make things pulsate.
Mm-hmm.
So you would learn how to do that, and then you would adapt it to different materials, and you'll find like, all right, this shot works great just for that. Everything, there's always I go through dollar stores, or you go through the grocery store, and I'm like, oh, I could use this for that. You know what I mean? Like, there's,
creative aspect.
Yeah, you can make zombies using breadcrumbs. Like, it's all that kind of thing. There's our world. It's the same as you find something and you figure out how to make it work. There are materials built and these rigs that are built now because of people just experimented and like, oh wow, we can make this work. There's materials we use. It's called transfer materials, and I don't know the exact history, so somebody will have to look this up. But it's called a prosthetics transfer. Prosthetics is the medical adhesive that we use to glue most of the prosthetics on. And somebody figured out if you freeze it, it actually can turn into an appliance. So whoever invented that is a genius, because now we make all these wounds and they're self-sticky, and they go right on there, just little cuts. You can sculpt it and mold it, and then you pour this material, you freeze it, you whip up your prosthetics in a mixer for a couple days, and it gets all the air out of it, and it turns in, and it goes from a liquid to a very strong, thicker than a milkshake. You know what I mean? It's like almost like, and then you would pour that into your mold and scrape it out of your mold. You stick it in the freezer for a couple hours. It comes out and it's an exact little, that goes on the same way. We have to wet it down like little kids' tattoos. Yeah. Goes on the same way as that. It's just like a little cut. It's revolutionized the industry because it just makes these little pieces. You don't have to build it up. Yeah. A lot of times, you can build something up on set, but then if you need it tomorrow, you need it to match.
That was somebody that was filming in the winter that left something out by accident, and they were like, "Oh fuck, let's try it anyways."
That's exactly. I'm pretty sure that is something that happened. They put it in this, so we need this to work. There's a lot of materials that we use that are, again, some of our materials we use a lot of expandable foams, which are for argument's sake, for the person that doesn't, it's the great stuff in a can.
Yeah.
It's not that. We use better stuff and it's better cell structure. But it's simply that 2-part mixture, expands and it fills your molds. We use a lot of stuff that would be considered building materials. We had a huge problem after, whether it be a COVID or a tornado or a hurricane that takes out, we have no building materials. The same thing construction guys will go through, because our chemical or whatever materials in this is also used in the construction field. So what we make our urethane molds out of, that's going to be back ordered for 2 weeks, because whatever component it is that also makes sheetrock or, so there's all that aspects of that kind of stuff. So yes, in our world, there's all type of rigs. When we've built blood rigs that just had a spray, and it's the same thing. We're just going to the Home Depot and being like, all right, if we screw this together and screw this together and screw that together, all right, we got something. So it's very much, I've had to make props, and a lot of that is literally going to a dollar store, the same way they made the spaceships for Star Wars. Oh, you just glue it all together and just put paint on it. And, wow, it looks completely different. We've done that kind of stuff.
Was there ever been a specific story where you've been away from your workshop on a set and you don't have some of these stores to get some of these products, that you were able to get creative because you didn't have time.
I don't always take away gigs because that's always my threat. But I've always been somewhere where we could get something, or we go with it. But yeah, there's been, I've had to go make bladders or do blood gags, and we needed condoms. All right, so you would fill your blood bag up. I don't know how to do squibs. Squibs, you had Chris talk all about squibs. Our poor man squib was, we would just hook it right up to a compressor, so we're really just blowing it out. Like it's really for the aftermath or like a blowout shot, because we don't have, I don't have a license for squibs, and I'm not going to mess with that. And let somebody that actually knows how to do all that do that. We'll give you the blood splatter if you need it. But I remember we were in Ohio somewhere, and we needed all these condoms. Plus, we were using them to make bladders. But so we bought 24 non-lubricated condoms, and then we also bought 4 jars of KY. And the lady, and then I felt weird because that was just weird because
it's a big orgy.
You like to add your own lube,
it's
but
two
that's
dudes. It's two dudes walking up, and I'm like, "Hey, man, let's just throw some gum in here so we don't look like weirdos." And then the lady's like, "Hey, do you realize you're buying lube and non-lubricated condoms?" And I just said, "You don't, trust me. We need not." And she's like, "Well, it's like." And I said, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Like,
just add in fake blood to really fuck with her head."
Hey, it's time for a shitty ad. Right now, we're doing a sale on Shitty Bling. We're giving away a choice of hat or beanie with every order of Shitty Bling that you do. Use the code quarter20 during checkout. Go to shittyrigs.com and order your bling today. Now back to this shit.
So there was always that aspect of, that kind of stuff. We've definitely bought things, listen, I bought sex toys because it was, we needed that for a shot, or it was easier to do that. Like, that industry knows everything.
What would you? Can you give me an example of something?
Things that vibrate and have to move. Like you could stick a vibrator in a little creature and then just have it.
That's awesome.
I mean, we wouldn't be doing this podcast if it wasn't for porn. There would be no digital cameras if there wasn't porn. So porn has changed every industry.
When you say make bladders with the condoms, what do you mean?
Well, just think of we'd have to we've all done a makeup person, or effects guy. We've always say a guy's transforming into a werewolf or a creature. You need that, his chest blows out, or his arm, and you need, blowing out, so you have your prosthetic over that, but then you need something underneath it. Now you can use a balloon, you can use a condom. The great thing about condoms is they're thin and they can expand a lot. They can fit a lot of different sizes, So, and it's already made. Sure, I can, I have latex at home, but who the hell wants to come over? Hey, I'm just heating up the condom. Let's get going, we can make all that stuff, but sometimes it's easier. It's already made. Mm-hmm. So that's already what we need, and we need that. So we'll use that all the time.
Yeah.
So what is it, just on the end of a hose with a rubber band?
More or less, that's, there's a little more finesse to it, But yes, in theory, that's basically what we're doing. Where we're taking a balloon, sometimes we want to make a bladder. That's another thing. They want a blood gag. Oh, we didn't know we were gonna have to do that, but we can. All right, if you don't show it, it's over the shoulder. Well, we could just go to Home Depot and get some tubing, get a rig for this and get a rig for that. Oh, we just need a balloon. Mm-hmm. So we'll buy, those little balloons that they make the animals out of, because it's thin and we can fit it underneath our appliance. Now we can get some blood for you.
And so it's literally expand the balloon. And
sometimes it won't. So, if you open the hole, if that's, you just need, I need it to bleed out of his arm. Okay. So we'll just run a tube, and, that way it's not the tube, it's the balloon. Right. So you're not seeing the tube, and we'll hook that up, and we'll try to hide that. So there's a lot of that aspect. If I'm on location, we can kind of figure out a gag easier than we can a makeup. Because usually the makeup, we're okay, if you need this to happen, sure. Have I made, guys more severely beaten up? Yeah, but that's usually, with paint or any other, I don't really, it's usually pre-designed. I might take 4 appliances and those 4 pieces might help me make a kind of Frankenstein a wound together.
Oh, wow.
And make it look even more grandiose than they wanted, because they're, we need this to be bigger than it is. So we might have to take a couple different pieces. And sure, I can't think of anything where I've had to really they're called out of the kit makeups. That's like what industry term we call it. And it's just kind of like taking anything that you can and making it. I've went to craft service. Oh, we need guys smushed in brains. Like we've had to blow up heads. It's like, all right, we'll just go save some eggs after lunch, after breakfast, and we'll stick all that in. What's over at Crafty that we can throw into this thing, and then when it explodes, or
Oh wow.
you know, so there's
Prosciutto today.
yeah, no, there's all that aspect of it. I mean, you know, I've done movies like where I wasn't always a fan, but where they've bought real pig guts and had people sitting, and I'm like, I don't personally want to do that because, you know,
No.
it always takes longer to film something. So all of a sudden, you know, all that meat's rotting. So I'd rather make that. But have we ever had to go get, I remember we were doing a simple autopsy and props didn't have it. We were going to ask for it, but they needed a liver. Well, we just went to the grocery store and bought a liver because it was going to be on like the autopsy, you know, they're weighing out something. So we just needed that texture to make it look like that.
I didn't know they sell human livers and
Well, they're not human, but, you know, luckily, you know, no one else knew that, so we were all right. You know, it was a quick shot. But there's all that aspect, you know, you can go to the grocery store and find everything we
Yeah.
do. If you didn't have if you didn't have glue, I've never done it, but you could use that K-Rose syrup is pretty damn sticky.
Yeah.
You know, there was the Dick Smith Monster Makeup Handbook, and you dip that in your cotton balls into K-Rose syrup, and you're gonna stick that on a person. You can make something like that happen.
Are there any like specific physical tools to have, like essentials that are needed or necessary? You know,
All right,
'cause a
you
lot of stuff-
mentioned like what are 5 essential
Yeah.
things I need to go to set with. It's my makeup kit. My makeup kit has all my brushes.
brushes.
Any of my makeup needs, a lot of times it's alcohol-based paints, which just means, you know, they're all alcohol activated. They come in either palettes or bottles, and they just have colors. It's just, you know, think of a makeup palette. Everyone's seen them. Now, these just happen to be alcohol. You know, you spray the alcohol on them and it turns them wet, and that, you know, you can paint with that. They're more translucent, so you would do layers. So I would definitely have my colors.
Colors.
Your glues. Glues are huge, and there's a million. There's silicone glues. There's prosthetic glues. There's or glues that you want to use more for silicone pieces, and then I need more than 5 things to do a makeup. Like that's the thing. But like I will always have. You always need your brushes. You always need your makeup kit. Appliances, if that's what you're doing, you need those, whether they be bought ahead of time, you made them ahead of time, you got your life casts. A lot of times, you know, you don't have an actor, I'll have to make a generic piece. I happen to have molds at home and life casts so I can size up the actor if that was the case. You could show up to set with I can show up with a makeup kit. My makeup kit is a little bit more pronounced now, but you need colors, glues, and brushes, and you can get any makeup done. I've watched guys that like took one palette. Like, here's the thing, you know, I'm sure you guys all show off too. You know, like the back of your truck has to be designed a certain way, or you know, your sound audio guy will have like, oh, I have my nice little table. You know, we're the same way. We set up our little makeup station. We have everything out there. You know, we have 6 different colors of blood, 6 different palettes of makeup. We have this. We have cream-based makeups. We have 4 different types of glues. We have all this. If you're good, you can just use one thing, one brush and one palette. You know what I mean? Like, it's all bells and whistles when you're throwing it out on the table. You also want cleaning removal products. You don't need to have the right products to take everything off. And it's like you learn. I remember when I started, you know, I would walk in with, you know, one of those husky, you know,
Tool bags,
but
yeah.
even the whole crate, you know, where I'm walking with the whole thing. Yeah, and then you get there and you're like, oh my God, I'm sweating, I'm dying. I just had to walk 62 blocks to get to set. It's like, oh, and all I'm using is a little circle wheel with 4 colors in it. You know? So like, you got to know each job has different things that you may need. If I'm doing a gore movie, I want to make sure I have my blood kit. You know, I don't always need my blood kit on every show. Like maybe this time we're only doing creatures, or there are people bigger than me doing the harder work. I need to have this, or I need to have this certain color to make this makeup work. I also am a firm believer in I like to buy product and just experiment with it. You know, like I like to find new products and new brushes and new, you know, but I think when I first started, you know, I just go to like the art store and just buy brushes. Now and I'm like, well, I'm never going to spend all that money on a makeup brush. Well, yeah, the makeup brushes are a huge difference, you know, like, and I also find the other ones you would throw away after, when you pay for something, sometimes it costs a little bit and you're like, all right, I'm going to take care of this. Like it gives you a little bit more respect for what you do. Like, well, I'm always going to have to throw away brushes. You know what I mean? That's just the way our industry works. But it's like, oh, I spent $400 on brushes. Well, I want to make sure those brushes last. You know what I mean? Or it's like a thing like every job I'm going to do, I'm going to bring new brushes in, or I'm going to try this new palette out. I've always want to like experiment with this.
That's great.
You know, and like learn that makeup aspect. So I just think as a makeup artist, you need a kit. Now, there's a lot that goes into that kit. And I think every department or every need you have can change job to job. But if you're starting out, look up what's in a makeup kit. But don't, you know, look at every makeup artist. I used to look at like what was on the table of these magazines I would read. I'm like, oh, I remember there was this palette I bought. It was a Krylon rubber mask grease paint palette. Rubber mask grease paint because when you would paint foam, makeup wouldn't stick to it. It would just rub off. So you had to get this one, and it had basically like a castor oil in it that would make it stick to the appliances. That palette, I think when I was a kid, was $75. I remember that day that I got it, like for, you know, that was a big deal when I bought one of those because that's what the pros used. So it was a big deal to have this 24 palette, and every year I buy a new one because it's literally like, when I started, that's what every guy had in his hand, you know, and I was like, that is the coolest thing. I barely use it. Like you don't, because we've moved to these alcohol-based paints.
Yeah.
You know, and where less is more. Back in the day, you had to paint foam latex. You had to paint it. You had to make Pax paint, which is glue and acrylic paint, your Prozade glue and your Pax paint together. And it makes so that way your acrylic paint won't flake off when it bends and it moves. It won't flake off on you. Like there was all these little things. There's so many little things that you have to learn. So it's like every job is different, you know, like one day I'm doing bullet hits. One day I'm doing tattoos. So I need I need tattoo pens, which are just, you know, alcohol activated pens that, you know, this is age 75% of a tattoo, you know, like they have 50% black, 75%, you know. You have to amass that kit. Now, the more you work, the bigger your kit becomes. So you just have to, every job is, your kit is ever changing.
Do you have a signature that you try to like work into, like you're building a skull for the first, like for a movie. Do you have like a thing that like, that's my skull, I know that because I put this mark on it?
I do think like not so much even like a signature. I think every artist has their own style of painting. And every artist has like their own sculpting style. Like, you know, I remember, you know, sure, I have my own style. Like people will pick it out more than I can pick it out because you're just so used to doing it. Right. I also love now these bigger projects. Like we get to tag team makeups. Like 2 or 3 of us will do it. And I love that because whereas my downfall might be this on a makeup, that might be the other guy's strong point. So like we'll have like a little dance together when we do a makeup, and he'll enhance what I'm not seeing and I can enhance what he's in, you know. It's really like I just like to be as collaborative as I can. Also, sometimes you just talk to your actor and he might want something. So you have to, you know, tailor to that, you know. So there are definitely signature stuff that I think every artist has. And sometimes it's a detriment. You know, you could see like, oh, that's, you know, I'm too thick there, or I'm too heavy-handed for this. Like I tend to like maybe have a heavy hand in certain things, which works great for like a monster movie, but maybe not great for like if you want to make that like a cute old lady, you know.
Right,
you know? Right. So that could make, you know, you got to adapt to that, and you know, also you have to be willing to take criticism. Yeah. And that's probably the hardest part is somebody saying, you could do better, you know. You have to be open to that and willing to have a buddy, and usually your good friends are the guys that you really work with that aren't trying to steal your job and want to work, you know, because let's be honest, we're all freelance, so there's always someone that wants your job and will do it cheaper, maybe even do it better sometimes. But it's always to stand back and have somebody else like, hey, what would you change? It's always good to work with somebody else because your eye is so used to seeing one thing.
Right.
So you need to have your eye open for that. Because again, it's what's through that lens that is really important. And I need to, that's the big thing for us is like sometimes you get too into it or you design it to look this way and then you get there and they're like, can you change this? I mean, it's usually like the smaller the movie, you never have enough time to build anything. And then that's the one director that wants like, I want another test of this, or can we change this sculpture? I'm like, you can only change the sculpture. So I know you want this. I'm so close. Can we just meet in the middle somewhere? Like, instead of 6 wrinkles, can I do 4? Because like because sometimes you're redoing a whole sculpt or you're changing things, and I'm trying to make simpler terms, but you'll get to a point where you have to mold it to get to the shot.
Right.
They
don't understand that it's another negative with a positive.
Yes.
That they're the bench.
Yeah, like I want to give you everything you want, but you also didn't. You only hired me with 2 weeks to get all this done. Like I have to get it done. Like you're not going to give me any extra days. And a lot of that, and I understand every job, especially a director is having so much come at him. I've been hired sometimes, before crews get started, and then they'll be like, well, we need to change this. And I'm like, well, I've already been working on this for a month. Like I need to know this before we do all this. Like, so there's aspects there that can be frustrating. I had to tell a director once too, I was like, I'll do anything you want. You paid for all this. It's not my fault if it doesn't get on screen, but you paid for it. Let's fight for that.
Right.
Yeah. My check already cleared. So we're good. Like I'm getting paid either way. I want to give you, but I also I'm fighting for you. I want to get that on screen.
Right.
A, for my ego, but for your movie, so let's figure out how we can make that work, but it's a lot of that. We design stuff and we get to set and it's completely the wrong side or just little things like that, the way they shot it,
So Brian, one of the latest projects you've worked on was Blackout that's out now. Can you tell us a little bit about your role on that film?
It's a Wolfman movie. So my partner and I, Pete Gerner, we created the Wolfman. He's excellently played by Alex Hurt, the son of William Hurt. And it's a little Glass Eye Pix movie directed by Larry Fessenden. He's the owner of Glass Eye Pix. He's an incredible filmmaker. I consider him a friend, but also he's the reason I still do independent, low-budget movies because of his attitude, his artistry, and his enthusiasm. I recommend anybody that wants to know about starting out and making small movies is to look up Glass Eye Pix. They are one of the greatest companies to work for in the sense of you are not a cog in the system. You are a piece of making that movie, and I think that's, we're all lucky enough to move up in our careers, but we should never forget, how important these small movies are and movies for directors. And again, this is a werewolf movie, but it's not a werewolf movie. It says there's much more going on talking about, the state of who we all are. And I think that's the aspect that he uses the wolfman, the werewolf as a metaphor for so many things. And I think in this day and age when movies get so commercialized, it's nice to see a movie, where the director, it's a true visionary director or pitch to a movie. And I think that's why I love doing these movies. And we got to do a cool Wolfman in the vein of the Lon Chaney makeup, the old school 1940s Universal Wolfman, which I've always been a fan of. I mean, as a makeup artist, I love all those big, huge werewolf movies, but
is that a specific style?
It's just literally just a snout. It's literally, if you look up Lon Chaney as the Wolfman, it's an old school look. It's not the big snout. We're avoiding the snout. We're avoiding the big stuff. Some of that was budget. Some of it was aesthetically. This is what our actor brought to life. We were going to brought to life this werewolf. We had a much bigger wolf man look that we were designing, but once the actor came in, he was all jacked, and we're going to cover his whole body in fur. This is ridiculous. We don't have the time. Everything worked out, and it's just a little labor of love. It's a movie that I hope people see, because I think it's a movie that deserves to be seen, and I hope more people will see this. He also has intentions of making a little bit of a mashup, because we did a Frankenstein movie together. He's done a previous vampire movie, so he's trying
his own universe.
He wants to make
cool.
a universal, like a universe movie where he brings all his monster characters, and I hope I will be a part of it, and I hope it can be a bigger thing than we've done in the past. And I've loved working with those guys. I've done movies like I Sell the Dead, The Innkeepers, Stakeland was a movie I loved. There's a book called Easy Rider, Raging Bulls, and it's all about making movies in the 70s. And working for Glass Eye is the closest I've ever gotten on any job I have that reminds me of like auteur-driven movies. And I think that's in the state of all this where we're at nowadays. Yeah. And it's also a movie where if you have a shitty rig and it can be used somewhere, like those are the movies where you're going to learn how to make your shitty rigs work, even in our aspect world, in our makeup world. And, we've taken little things and made it bigger, and, that you might have more money to spend on a thing, but it's the ingenuity in filmmaking that makes you really a part of those type of smaller movies.
Oh, yeah. That's
man.
awesome.
And check out the latest issue of Fangoria magazine. I should have some cool stuff in that.
Oh, nice.
Oh, hell yeah.
That'd be dope.
Yeah.
Brian, man, thank you so much for your time. This has been really great. Learned so much more about like prosthetics and how stuff is made, which is really cool, and like how to design and get creative.
I think I really appreciate this, guys, and I've actually been watching your YouTube page, so
nice.
I think everyone should check this out. It's a lot of fun, and you guys
appreciate it.
Bring a certain energy, and I really appreciate being a part of this.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely. It sounds like we got to bring some of the Glass Eye picks people on this as well.
I think it's about that time.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks again, Brian.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
Cheers.
Later.